Do you find you can't get enough spooky goodness? Then by Jove, you need to check out the Generally Spooky Patreon. For the princely sum of £4 a month, you can enjoy our main episodes a whole day earlier than the general public. If that doesn't float your boat, you can become an £8 a month spooky trooper. You'll get the main episodes early and access to 12 extra Patreon exclusive episodes, with more to come. The episode that really tickles my pickle is about Private Wojtek, a brown bear that served in World War II. As a top draw £12 a month Spookmaster General, you'll be on Cloud 9 with access to our Wee Blether series. In it, my darling wife and I debrief episodes, play games, and chitter-chatter about our goings-on. You'll also become a member of the Spooky Book Club, where Eilidh is currently reading us Peter Pan, having just finished Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. Simply marvellous. Did I mention you also get 10% off our quality merchandise if you join? You bet your bacon you do. So come join us. Get your peepers over to patreon.com/generallyspooky and support your favourite rapscallions. Tally-ho!
Hi, I'm Marty.
And I'm Effie.
And we would love you to come and join us on our podcast, Mums, Mysteries and Murder.
Each month we take turns telling you true crime stories and mysteries from our places of birth, Australia and Scotland.
I'm covering Australia.
What's your favourite thing about Australia, Marty?
It would have to be the weather and the meat pies.
The meat pies are strong in Australia.
The meat pie game is good.
Really? Oh. I'm covering Scotland.
What's your favourite thing about Scotland?
And macaroni pies and haggis. Haggis balls.
Macaroni. Macaroni should not be in a pie.
Have you tasted one though?
No, I don't need to. It's like Mars bars.
It's amazing. If you love podcasts that are on point, heavily researched and full of gruesome details, that's probably not us.
But if you do love a bit of true crime chat, Netflix recommendations and random banter, we do talk about last meals a lot, don't we?
Yeah, but it's a good topic.
Macaroni pie for your last meal?
Yes.
Meat pie. Then come join us where you get your podcasts, and we would love it if you would subscribe so you don't miss new episodes.
Come and follow us on Instagram at Mums, Mysteries and Murder.
Bye.
Bye.
Honestly, I don't even know if we have time to introduce ourselves.
Do you think we just gotta dive in? I mean, oh my god.
We do not have time.
Hello again, everybody. Welcome to part 4 of the Edinburgh Castle saga.
The epic, the legend, the behemoth.
The sieged. This is the Generally Spooky Podcast. If you haven't listened before, you should go to part 1 of this series, because what are you doing here?
Or any other episode. This is the last episode of a season.
Yeah.
We have so many. This is technically our 50th episode. So there's plenty for you to check out and have a look at if you're interested.
That's true. Although 50th episode is going to get stretched out if we're going to do 4-parters.
50th subject?
Yes.
Topic?
50th topic.
Because this episode is 4 episodes long at this point.
Yeah. There's not enough subdividers, is there?
I'm taking this as the 50th episode because it makes me happy.
I think so. I'd agree with that.
This is the end of season 5. Our longest season ever.
End of season 5.
This feels momentous to me.
I think so. It's quite an occasion.
We've had a lot going on.
Yeah, it's not been a good time outside of the podcast.
So bringing this to a really lovely close feels kind of nice.
Yeah, it does feel nice. We're going to get it done.
That's Kieran with the jokes.
Hell yes.
You all know him. You all love him.
That's Eilidh with the stories and the content and the research and everything else.
He's just Ken. That's not the truth. But it's funny.
It's funny though. Well, you asked me to workshop something at the end of last episode.
Did I?
You did.
Did you actually go do some homework?
Yes.
Oh my god.
So I tried to make a pirate pun and it didn't work.
Oh yeah.
Because I said steaming ahead like a pirate, which obviously doesn't make sense.
Obviously.
Obviously.
Because that's the main issue.
So I have 4 others and you can choose your favourite.
Oh, well, why don't you say the 4? Mm-hmm. We'll roll the music, give people a chance to think about what they like, and then we'll come back and we'll pick a favourite.
Okay, that seems fair. I hope we get pie right to it.
Pie right?
Pyrite to it.
But pyrite is like a rock.
Well, you don't have to vote for that one.
Okay.
You don't have to challenge them. I'm not looking for feedback.
No. I'm going to give you like in-depth critique. I'm going to tear you down.
Each one, that was shit. Next.
Go on.
I don't really want to now.
Do tell.
Here we are again.
Oh, I like that one.
For part 4. Well, you shot on the first one, so that you're going to shit in this one too, but there's a pie right way and a pie wrong way to capture a pirate. So we're going to find out what that is. And then I wanted to ask what you have got pie written for today's episode.
Well, I have a clear favourite.
Okay.
So let's roll the music. You think at home what one you like the best. Shout it really, really loudly at us, and then we'll know which one everyone likes.
We will know.
Okay. I heard you guys. You were very loud. You were wonderful. My favourite is Here We Are Again.
I mean, it's got to be that one, doesn't it?
It's perfect.
Mm-hmm. That one makes the most sense.
It just works.
Yeah.
I like that one a lot. Good job.
Thanks.
Appreciate you. I've clean forgotten about that because I've been manically working on the rest of this episode.
I mean, it's not really your area, is it?
Oh no, I don't know if I'm a very funny person.
I think you're funny.
Well, that's good. But you know, like I'm not known for being funny, I don't think.
I mean, I think I've just demonstrated that I'm not either, so.
Please let us know in some scathing comments. That would be lovely.
No, I would not. I get enough of those from my wife.
Okay, yes, we are carrying on talking about Edinburgh Castle. This is likely to be a pretty long episode, so get some snacks. This is the perfect opportunity to indulge in your favourite snack food. Highly recommend. But we're carrying on talking about Edinburgh Castle, and Kieran has led us nicely into a reminder about where we left things last time.
That's what I hope to do.
Because I told you that in 1720, which is where we're starting the episode, several pirates were captured and held prisoner in Edinburgh Castle.
Hell yes, they were.
Are you surprised?
I am surprised, actually.
Like, I know you saw a bit about it when we visited, but looking at that too, were you surprised to hear that pirates were held in the castle?
Most definitely, because I guess because of Pirates of the Caribbean. Pirates are something that happen in sunny locations. Definitely not around Scotland.
You're not wrong. That is the case.
Because I think of raiders in Scotland, and reivers, like on land. Maybe even like raiders taking boats, like dinghies out to steal from a ship and then taking it on land again.
Smuggling.
Yeah, that kind
Lots
of
of
thing.
smugglers' coves in and around the coast of Scotland.
But not pirates.
Well, let me tell you what happened. In 1720, people in Argyll noticed something strange out in the water. And if you remember, Argyll is the sort of southwest coast of Scotland. We're in Inverary territory, but this didn't happen in Inverary.
In that Inverary.
Oh, see, this is what people come back for. This is it. This is free. A ship called the Eagle was being abandoned just off the coast, and people on shore watched as the crew were being really weird about the whole thing, as they were preparing just to leave their ship and come on to land. Everything was all a bit sus, so the men were pretty much immediately taken into custody to be like, the fuck is this?
What are you doing?
People don't just do that. Why are you abandoning this ship? The ship was inspected, and it was discovered that the Eagle was stuffed full of gold.
Oh, shit. Is this the same Eagle that transported the records?
No, I don't believe so.
Okay.
I think it just had the same name. Yeah, the Elizabeth was the one that sank. The Eagle was the other ship. I think this is a different ship altogether.
A different Eagle.
And I should say that your brother Struan helpfully messaged me listening to an old episode saying, "Ships, Ailey, boats go on ships, not the other way round."
That is true.
They were ships. So this can all only mean one thing.
Pirates.
Pirates.
And booty.
That's something different. That's for a different kind of podcast.
Oh, generally spooky 18 plus.
No, thank you. It turns out that this was no ordinary crew. These 21 men who had been taken into custody had been the crew of the dreaded, the famous Bartholomew Roberts.
Ooh.
You might know him as Black Bart.
Ooh, I know Blackbeard.
No, not Blackbeard, Black Bart.
Black Bart, okay.
He was one of the most successful and feared pirates that operated in the Caribbean.
Oh, yeah?
He's the inspiration for Dread Pirate Roberts in The Princess Bride.
I was going to ask that. When you said dreaded, I was like, is it the Dread Pirate Roberts?
Yeah, literally, this is this guy.
Damn.
When you imagine your stereotypical Caribbean pirate, it's Black Bart.
Excellent.
And he was only in operation for like 3 years, but he is the real deal when we're talking pirates.
Made his mark.
Yes.
God damn.
So later, one of the men who was captured off Argyle, John Stewart, which is funny to me because it's my granddad's name.
Yep.
And he hated the water. Hated it. He explained that he had actually started his career very honestly. He had left Dartmouth the year before in 1719, but his ship had been captured by pirates, which was pretty common. And this had led to him being forced into a life of piracy. Otherwise, he would have been killed.
Well, I know which one I'd choose.
You know, he had to go along, he had to play along. So that's how he ended up in Black Bart's crew. John Stewart said, "After we had made what resistance we could, they compelled me and several others out of our ships to go along with them, and upon our refusal threatened to put us immediately to death, or leave us upon some desolate island, which is nothing better than death." So they'd be marooned.
Yep. Well, yeah, you would choose piracy.
Right? It's that or death. But the punishments for piracy were pretty severe. So you're not in a great spot.
Well, yeah, because if you get captured, you'll be put to death. But, you know, you might as well be a pirate for a bit before you die, if that's your only options.
And it's not like they were taken and forced to be pirates by just anyone. They were under Black Bart. Now, he was such a significant figure in piracy that when he was killed in battle with the Royal Navy in 1722, this marked the end of the golden age of piracy.
God damn.
He captured 470 ships.
In 3 years?
In 3 years.
God damn.
He basically wrote the pirate code, which I think everyone knows a little bit about if you've watched, pirate movies or know anything about them. He basically wrote it.
God damn.
And he adopted the skull and crossbone colours.
That was him?
He flew them from his ship. He was one of the first people to do that.
Oh, wow.
And he had variations of it. There's some where he would be depicted on the flag alongside like death with a flaming sword, that he would never die. When you think pirate, it's Black Bart.
Absolutely. I learned that with the pirates, like it's the crossed bones underneath the skull. That's for if you were like lying in a coffin with your arms crossed. Your like forearms are crossed, and that's what that is.
That is what that would look like.
Yeah. Or I don't know if it's definitely what it is, but someone pointed that out and I was like, oh yeah. So it's like a dead person.
Spooky. I'd love to do a whole episode on Black Bart, but I don't think it would really fit because he was from Wales. He was Welsh.
Oh, really?
Yeah. He wasn't Scottish, so it would be a bit out of place to do a whole episode on him, but absolutely fascinating and terrifying. Terrifying figure.
Absolutely.
So these 21 men that were captured in Argyle had served under Black Bart, and some of them had served under Black Bart longer than others. Some of them took more part in, stealing and forcing other people into service than other ones of them had. So there were varying degrees of quote-unquote guilt among them. But the reason that they were there with all of this gold is because these men were retiring from piracy.
Oh, I did wonder, like, what's the end goal?
They had ended their pirating career and wanted to come back home, but they got caught just before they managed.
I mean, I feel someone would have asked where they got all these mountains of gold from.
Depends if they were clever with it or not.
Yeah, I guess so.
According to Historic Scotland, only 2 of the gang admitted their guilt. 19 men went to trial. 7 were set free, and the remaining dozen were found guilty.
Well, what do you do if you were forced into it?
Right? It's a tricky line to walk. And this is why Edinburgh Castle comes into the story, because the men were held prisoner in the castle until their trials were done.
Okay.
The 2 men who actually admitted that they were pirates were sentenced first, because they had admitted it, so they were guilty. It's fairly well known, but do you want to take a crack at what happened to them?
Death.
I meant a bit more specific, but...
Death by hanging.
Yes. Yes. Robert Hughes and John Clark, who had admitted their guilt, were taken to Leith Sands and hanged by the neck upon the gibbet on 14th December 1720. Their bodies were left hanging in chains between the high and low water mark as a warning to others.
Ooh.
Which I think is something that people have heard about before.
Yes, again, you know, my source of Pirates of the Caribbean also includes that.
It's an academic source.
Absolutely.
So yeah, they were hung off the high water mark in Leith.
Goddamn.
To deter other pirates.
Brutal. Mm-hmm. I prefer the Pirates in an Adventure with Scientists.
That's a brilliant movie.
And then there's the one pirate in his cage going, beware!
Highly recommend. It's very, very funny. Like I said, John Stewart was one of the men who was taken, and he was in the dozen men who were found guilty of piracy through trial.
Oh, yeah.
And before he was hanged in January 1721, he recorded his last words, which still exists. He talks a bit about what he went through and how he didn't have a choice but to become a pirate to save his own skin. The bit I quoted earlier is from his last words. This is what he went on to say. "And I do solemnly declare as a dying man that whatever I did while I was aboard of the pirate ship was by force and upon the peril of my life, and that I and these taken with me are not only innocent of what is laid to our charge, but during the time we was aboard of them, I never seed them wrong man, woman, or child. And I, with several others, having at last made our escape, we sailed for Britain, with no other design but to free and clear ourselves from the tyranny of those pirates that had detained so fair contrary to our inclinations. And having landed in the west of Scotland, everybody knew how we have been treated since that time, and I might have purchased my life had my conscience allowed me to comply with the solicitation of them, who would have had me appear as an evidence against those that were as innocent as myself. But I never could think of saving my life at so dear a rate."
Oh, that's fair.
Very powerful.
To give his life, to save his life and give up his friends who were innocent. That's not something that should be done lightly.
It wouldn't have sat well with him.
No.
Knowing they were in exactly the same position as him.
It's quite like the witch's conundrum, really, isn't it?
Yeah.
I'm like, well, if you'd been put to death, then we'd know you were innocent. I'm like, well, what am I supposed to do? Well, I didn't want to die, so I joined them. Yes, so you're a pirate. What?
Yeah. And it was after this that he got the long drop.
With the short stop.
Did. One of the men who admitted that he was guilty at the beginning, John Clark, also made a last statement. And it's interesting reading what he had to say compared to John Stewart, who maintained that he was innocent and he just did what he had to do. So I'll read you some parts of what his last words were.
Was he just loving it?
Oh, you'll see. I think it's interesting. It's not what I expected. "And it is no less true that when we came out with the Buck," which is the ship, "we intended to carry, or I should say, when he talks about the Buck, he's talking about an older ship that he was on.
Oh, okay.
Not the Eagle that they were found with. "When we came out with the Buck, we intended to carry on a lawful trade, but were prevented by the insurrection of the old offenders, who took the sloop away from these that came from England in it, of whom Roger Hughes was one. And Robert Hughes was executed as a pirate as part of this group.
Okay.
So I'm wondering if he's made a mistake.
Yeah.
As he's written his statement down. It is a great trouble to me to think of the suffering of this man and others that are condemned to die. For alas, I was at the taking of them out of their respective ships, and forcing them, much against their wills, to go along with us in a very wicked court of life.
Wow.
I go out of this world with a heavy heart when I think how innocently these poor men must suffer. If all those who are taken by pirates are sentenced to die, a great many of the king's good subjects will suffer unjustly.
Oh. God damn.
So remember, there were sort of varying levels of guilt.
Yes.
So it seems like he was a pirate.
Yeah, he was all in.
He goes on a little bit more. I cannot go out of this world with any peace of mind without declaring publicly that I think they are much wronged and unjustly condemned. Sentence might very justly have passed on the doctor and me, for he and I were long engaged in these wicked courts. But as for these poor men, they were taken by us and others from their honest way of getting bread, and never did any of these things that they were accused of. But as they were forced to the working of the ship, which if they had refused, they would have been shot to death that moment. It is no wonder, then, that they complied so far, for it is natural for us to shun immediate death, and to preserve our lives as long as we can. As I am a dying man, I have told you nothing but the truth of them. Further, I reckon I am bound in conscience to inform you that those poor men who are now condemned several times, with the hazard of their lives, endeavoured to make their escape from us. And I declare, on the word of a dying man, that I am persuaded that if Captain Roberts had met with them, they would all either have died by his hand, or at least been let ashore on some desolate island.
God damn. Because my first thought when he gave himself up as a pirate was he was going to try and use that to then, like, get a lesser sentence.
Nope.
So he'd be dogging in his fellows.
Nope. He absolutely didn't do that. And his statement is not necessarily what you would expect.
No, not at all.
Maybe he's trying to advocate for the other men.
Oh.
Saying that, no, like, we forced them. They didn't want to. They even tried to escape. And had they been caught, the captain would have killed them.
Oofed. It's brutal, isn't it?
Right? But I thought it's interesting when he says that, like, if everyone who's forced to become a pirate is put to death, a lot of innocent people will die.
Yeah. It's just, oh man, it's totally different to how I expected piracy to be.
Right?
Very interesting. And ironic, I thought he talked about escape, he meant escape from jail.
No, this is escape from the ship.
Ah.
The pirate ship.
Because I was laughing that if they escape from jail, they'll have no choice but to become pirates.
But now we want to be...
Yeah, now I guess I'm choosing to be a pirate. So if they catch me again, then yeah, okay.
I've been wronged, so I'm a pirate now.
Yep.
So yeah, those are the pirates of Edinburgh Castle.
Wow.
Black Bart's crew.
Oh, but Black Bart himself wasn't.
No, he died in the Caribbean in a sea battle with the Royal Navy.
Yes. As mentioned earlier.
Which I imagine if you're a pirate of that kind of caliber is probably how you want to go.
Yeah, probably. Well, yeah, because if you've captured 400 ships...
470.
470 ships, are you just going to keep going? I guess so.
Why wouldn't he?
Yeah.
He's really good at it.
God damn.
So that was 1720 into 1721. In the 1730s, the Argyll Battery was built in the castle. And this was named after the second Duke of Argyll, who we talked about in our Campbell's episode. He fought against the Jacobites at Sheriffmuir in 1715, so he was honoured with having this artillery battery named after him.
Pretty cool.
And it's very much giving the impression that the castle is armed to the gills, because there's another battery being built.
Is that what a battery is? An armament?
Yeah, so this is where the guns would be.
Okay.
They could fire from the battery.
Mm.
But I think I must have made a mistake last episode, which I do beg your pardon for, because I read that in 1737, permanent changes were made to the Great Hall to turn it into soldiers' barracks.
Oh.
And I said that these changes had happened under Cromwell.
Yes.
So it seems that he did change it into barracks, but the permanent structural changes didn't happen until 1737.
Ah, I see.
When the new windows were put in, new fireplaces were put in. Cromwell just... It was more makeshift
Yeah.
when he changed the purpose of the Great Hall.
Got you. We'll forgive you this time.
Oh, thank you. I mean, I'm not doing too bad.
You're doing okay. You're doing okay. You get a pass.
I get a pass. Hey, I caught it. I must have misread it when I was looking through things.
Just mad because you criticised my pun at the start.
You're going to be mad about that. We're never going to get along.
We'll see.
Now, you're going to be excited because I believe we've made it to the final siege of Edinburgh Castle.
The final siege? Oh my god.
The very last one. This happened in 1745. Why did it happen in 1745, Kieran?
Because there's a Jacobite rising.
Yes, there was. This was the final Jacobite rising, the final siege of Edinburgh Castle, and this was Bonnie Prince Charlie trying to take back the British throne on behalf of his father, James VIII, the Old Pretender.
Yes.
I got all confused last week, so that is how it happened.
That's who he is. That's who his dad is.
And I've double checked for you because we briefly touched on it last time, and it annoyed me because I didn't have the answers to hand. This was the last siege, and it was the 23rd official siege of Edinburgh Castle.
Yes, because I said last time I haven't been keeping count, so I wasn't sure how long we'd go.
No, I hadn't either. But there's a great document from Historic Scotland. I think it's just called Under Siege, and they've documented every single one at Edinburgh Castle.
Very cool.
And they're numbered, so you know which one. Mm-hmm. So the one we talked about last time with the ladders, the whole ladder debacle.
Yep.
That was the 22nd. This is the 23rd.
Got you. All right.
I'm glad I could clear that one up.
Yes. That would have rattled around your brain until next season started.
It would have, yeah, I would have had to check. So I had to put it down. Because I haven't talked about every single thing. I don't think we've talked about 23 sieges. But some of them are just, yeah, they're siegelings, like you said.
Oh,
it's
yeah.
just like a little go.
A little blip.
Bonnie Prince Charlie raised the standard of his father on the 19th of August 1745 at Glenfinnan.
When he was supposed to.
Yes, he had the authority and the permission to do this.
Yep.
We've talked about this before. We have our Culloden episode. Mm-hmm. This is the Jacobite Rising that culminated with the Battle of Culloden. So if you want to know more about that, I would recommend having a listen to the episode.
Yes.
We talk a bit about what led to the battle. Mm-hmm. Not the whole rising, because that's a series in itself.
Yeah.
So we're in August 1745, and Glenfinnan is between Fort William and Mallig. It's in the Highlands. On the 16th of September, so about a month later, Charlie and his forces had made their way down south and set up camp on the sort of edges of Edinburgh, ready to take the city.
They're going to have a go.
Well, he had a very specific reason for doing this himself. There was a reason that he wanted Edinburgh Castle. So I'd like to hear what your guesses are for why he wanted to take it.
It's got to be the prestige of it being where, like, the kings are, right? He'll want the crown jewels or the stone of destiny, something like that.
That's a very good guess. He wanted the crown jewels.
Yeah.
That's what he went for, because these are the symbols of the monarchy. Mm-hmm. So, you know, if he can take them, that's pretty... I'm sure in his mind it would be compelling. I'm pretty sure the ordinary person wouldn't really care because it's just war and they don't like that. But
yes.
In his mind, this would show that his cause was righteous.
Signify it.
Yeah. So he's wanting to take the castle. He's wanting to retake and reclaim the crown jewels. They've been stashed away in the castle for years, but no one's seen them for quite a long time.
Okay.
So they've become kind of a mystical object.
Except for the people trying them on, as I joked about last time.
Oh, no. Well, I actually discovered that when they were stashed away in the chest, in the crown room was bricked up.
Well, that's one way to keep them safe.
So no one has seen them in a very long time.
Ooh.
And some people are beginning to doubt that they're even there.
Well, I was about to say, how do you know they're still there?
So they do have a bit of an aura about them by this time.
Oh, that's pretty interesting.
When Bonnie Prince Charlie wants them.
Yes. To signify his godly right.
Yeah.
All that.
It's almost kind of sword in the stone. That only the worthy will find them.
Yep. I was thinking it's very stick of truth that he who holds the stick holds the power.
I mean, those are the rules.
Yep.
Where are we? So yes, Charlie and his forces are outside Edinburgh. I was surprised in my research to read that not much was done to stop the Jacobites from taking the town of Edinburgh.
Oh, really?
The Jacobites never took the castle.
No.
But not much was done to stop them taking control of the town.
Oh.
The siege document I was telling you about says, the mixed views of the inhabitants of Edinburgh, their preparations to resist the Jacobites, and the way they were let down by the government forces that should have made more effort to protect Scotland's capital city, are all detailed in contemporary documents, especially eyewitness accounts.
Wow.
Which I didn't have time to find. I wish I had. But people were complaining that they just let the Jacobites come and take the city.
It's not great. My only thought could be that the government forces were just like, well, they're not getting the castle, so let's just turtle into the castle.
That's basically it. The castle was the prize,
and
that was what they were interested in defending. They didn't care about the people of Edinburgh.
Never do. Neither did the Jacobites.
Particularly. So, and the Jacobites had a really quite fearful reputation, like coming down from the north, these Highland warriors. So the people of Edinburgh were scared. Or the ones who didn't support the Jacobite cause were.
Yeah.
There were some Jacobite supporters in Edinburgh. But they felt like they'd just been left to deal with it. That the government really only cared about the castle.
Yeah, well...
Which was true, really.
Well, that's the problem, isn't it? They weren't wrong.
But like you said, it made sense for them to put their effort into defending the castle, because the castle was better equipped to defend against an attack.
Yes.
So their chances were better against the Jacobites. The castle had lots of big guns, like we've talked about at length. Lots of munitions. They were well stocked with provisions. So they could hold out pretty well if it came to siege.
Yep.
They were in a really good position. So they decided just to defend the castle. Now, it's surprising, again, but George Preston was still the man in charge up at the castle in 1745.
Oh, it's still.
He was the one in charge during the siege of 1715.
Yeah, 30 years later.
He was still the guy. He was the deputy governor. And I've heard he was the deputy governor because governor was purely ceremonial.
Oh, I see, yeah.
So he's actually in an active role as deputy governor. But he was 86.
I was going to say 30 years later. Wow.
86. And he absolutely refused to back down. He was not giving up the castle. He considered himself fully capable. And I even read that he demanded to be pushed around in his wheelchair to inspect his men every 2 hours.
Every 2 hours.
He was very involved.
Oh. He sounds crabbity.
And he made it very plain he would not give up the castle to the Jacobites.
Those pesky Jacobites. They tried 30 years ago, they're going to try again.
He was a Scottish man, I should say. Alongside George Preston, there was General Joshua Guest, who was posted at the castle at the time the Jacobites arrived. He was 85 and had been commander-in-chief in Scotland. He had a lot of experience, but he was also getting on in years.
So it's the hub of Scotland's military force / nursing home.
I mean, this doesn't hugely surprise me, because if you look at a lot of government cabinets around the world and politicians, it's all old white men.
Yeah.
You know, like Trump, Biden, diametrically opposed politically, but they're both old men.
Both old men.
So it still happens.
And, well, because arguably they have the most experience.
And they're well respected.
Yeah.
So if they make an order, they're going to be listened to, which is particularly important under siege and attack.
Because you obviously hold a lot of respect if people listen to you from a wheelchair.
But yeah, they were in their mid-80s.
Damn. Oh, I see what's wrong here. I have the grandpa from Arthur Christmas in my head.
Again, another amazing movie. Highly recommend you watch any day of the year.
I would recommend you watch it at Christmas only.
I would watch it anytime.
I know you would.
Love that movie. So I said already, on the 16th of September, the Jacobites set up camp outside Edinburgh. By the 18th, they had set up camp under the Salisbury Crags, which are big cliff faces, which are now in Holyrood Park. And they're not that far away from Holyrood House Palace.
Okay.
Holyrood House Palace was where Bonnie Prince Charlie set up his own camp. He wasn't down with the men. He was in the palace and he was quite comfortable. I think I said in our King David episode he was receiving visitors and things as if he was holding court.
Yes.
So he was treating this as his like birthright.
Oh, he seems like such a wee dick.
But I guess like I don't like it either, but I can see the sense in it, because if he's trying to claim that he's Prince of Britain, he should act like it.
Well, he has to act like it, doesn't he?
You know?
Otherwise he's going to Cromwell it.
Like, I do get it. Mm-hmm. But I think a lot of people felt the same way, where they're just like, what are you doing? Because in my mind, a good leader stays with his men.
Yeah.
But he's not a military leader.
No.
He had little to no experience with combat.
I think that's why he always seems just like a wee dick, doesn't he?
He was very young, too. Mm-hmm. He was he was 22.
Oh.
A very young, 21, 22?
Around that.
I'm saying that just off the cuff. I haven't even looked into it, just making things up. So these are the actions of an arrogant young man, I think.
Yeah, that's it. It's all very arrogant.
Yeah. But you can see the logic from his mind. Well, where else would I be?
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm going to be in a manky camp.
So the siege, does it begin? Is them ready?
Well, yes. Cannon started being fired on the Jacobites on the night of the 18th from the castle. Because the cannons can go pretty far.
Yep.
But the crags gave them some cover. That's why they decided to camp there. The cannon fire couldn't reach them because of these huge big cliff faces that they were underneath.
Very nice.
I'm assuming that the Jacobite army as a whole either temporarily left Edinburgh or was split in different places at this time. Because the Battle of Preston Pans was on the 21st.
Oh.
Which wasn't terribly far away.
No.
But I don't know if there was a detachment left outside Edinburgh to carry on the siege and taking the town, or if they just left and then came back.
Oh,
but the battle of Preston Pans was the Jacobite victory. So when they were coming back, they were on a high.
Yeah, they were jazzed.
And it was after this victory that the Jacobites took Edinburgh town. But the castle was still held by the government.
Yeah.
So now we have a separation like we've seen before. Mm-hmm. Is this making sense?
Absolutely. So by taking the town, it sounds like they just sort of wandered in.
Kinda, yeah. They just took it. They faced very little resistance because it's like we've said before, people don't really care. They just don't want to die.
Yeah.
A lot of people aren't willing to die for their political beliefs or who they want to be king. Some do, but the ordinary person typically doesn't want to do that.
Yeah.
As the days passed and the Jacobites had the town for longer and longer, Jacobite soldiers started moving into civilian homes, which were closer to the castle.
Yep.
So they're getting closer and closer, trying to establish as close a line as they can to launch an attack on the castle.
Well, if they didn't try and defend the city, I imagine they're going to have no trouble firing on the city.
We're going to get there.
Yeah.
There were Jacobite soldiers staying in houses around Grassmarket and Haymarket, if you know Edinburgh at all. It's okay if you don't. You don't need to for this story. So now the Jacobites are properly besieging the castle. Movement isn't as free and easy anymore between the castle and the town. But at this time, the Jacobites were still allowing letters to be sent back and forth between castle and town.
Interesting.
So government forces were able to pass information reasonably freely, which seems silly.
Yeah, I wonder what the benefit of that was.
I'm not really sure. I read that Joshua Guest, he was the general, I read that he had been really close friends with the secretary of Bonnie Prince Charlie. So I wonder if this was just sort of a gentlemanly gesture.
Yes.
Like, things don't have to be nasty. We can be gentlemen about it. But this was ruined because on the 29th of September, a secret letter was discovered in a stick of butter.
And a stick of butter.
In a stick of butter, because the Jacobites were specifically allowing butter and milk to be brought into the castle for Guest.
Oh, interesting.
It was like a luxury that he was being provided. But then he started smuggling letters in and out. So they decided this wasn't going to happen anymore, and they said no more letters between castle and town. Not happening.
I mean, yeah, obviously. I struggle to see why they didn't do that beforehand.
Well, that's why I think it's this gentlemanly thing.
Yeah.
You know, between distinguished army men, we don't have to debase ourselves. We can be proper about it.
I guess so. Strange.
It's a difficult concept to understand, but I can see it happening here.
Yep.
Now, I'm a little bit confused with the dates, because this seems very close together to be happening on the same day. But I read that it was also on the 29th that Guest spat the dummy about not being allowed to communicate with the town of Edinburgh anymore. So the letter was discovered on the 29th. The Jacobites decided that letters weren't allowed anymore. But this was when Guest sent a letter to the Provost of Edinburgh.
Okay.
Complaining about this arrangement.
Oh, I don't understand, like, military stuff. Because I'm like, what, aren't you under siege? How can you just make a complaint? Like, what's happening here?
Well, this was more than a complaint. I say complaint just to try and get the point across.
Yeah.
That I'm not really sure about the dates of these things. But Guest sent a letter to the Provost of Edinburgh, basically warning him that if the Provost didn't negotiate with the Jacobites and force them to open up communication again, Guest was going to fire the castle cannons on Edinburgh to force the Jacobites to leave.
Ah, now see, that makes more sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
So he is spitting the dummy. He thinks that this is out of order, but he's given him an ultimatum saying, you have to convince them to fix this, or I'm going to fire the guns.
Yep. Old Provost?
Yes.
Well, how does he get on with that?
Well, the Provost was probably shitting himself.
Yeah.
And I also think it's pretty shitty that Guest wouldn't negotiate with the Jacobites directly. He was making the Provost do it. Like, he wouldn't even talk to them.
Yeah, that's true.
And that the Provost was concerned because there's a history of the cannons being fired on Edinburgh. Like, it does happen.
It wouldn't be the first time.
It's not good. So he went to Bonnie Prince Charlie. He went to Charlie and tried to convince him to let the castle send letters again in order to protect the people of Edinburgh, to prevent bloodshed. And thankfully, he kind of managed to talk him round.
Okay.
Negotiations weren't resolved immediately. These things always take time. But Guest was happy enough that the negotiations were happening, that he agreed he wouldn't fire any cannons while this was all underway.
That's nice.
And I think he was allowed to send letters again in the interim, but it wasn't a permanent agreement or truce.
Yes.
Things are just being discussed and they're trying to decide the best way to handle things. So no cannons, letters are fine.
Okay.
Unfortunately, after this sort of mishap, this bittering of relations, things got worse. According to Historic Scotland, as was no doubt intended, the Provost consulted with the Prince and negotiations were commenced that resulted in a suspension of the threatened action while Guest got advice from his superiors in London. On 1st of October, however, some people carrying food to the castle were shot upon by the Jacobites. And in retaliation, the next day the castle fired cannon and firearms at the houses sheltering the Highland Guards.
Ooh.
The house of Alan Ramsay, the poet of known Jacobite sympathies, was also demolished, with some 8 to 10 cannon shot.
Oh, God.
Another shot hit the reservoir. Possibly the cannonball lodged in the wall of Cannonball House on Castle Hill was shot at this time. All this resulted in an increase in the blockade and a proclamation by the Prince forbidding all contact with the castle on pain of death.
Ooshed. That's more what I expect in a siege.
Yes, so this is getting nasty now.
Yeah.
They've sort of given up the pretense of civility. They are at war with each other.
It's taken a while, though, all the way through to October from June.
Oh no, they arrived in Edinburgh halfway through September.
Oh,
This
okay.
isn't in June.
I must have made up June.
The standard was raised mid-August.
Oh, yeah.
They got to Edinburgh mid-September.
Maybe I just got June because this is June.
This is June. It is currently June, yes. No, this has been like 2 weeks.
Okay, that makes more sense.
And there's been a battle in between.
Yeah.
So it's not a huge amount of time.
Well.
Now, Cannonball House is an interesting one.
Yeah, I wondered if we were going to come back to that.
Did you clock it?
Yes. Do we know that? Have we?
I didn't even realise this, even though you and I have walked past it so many times.
Have we?
Yes, it's a big stone building right beside the esplanade that leads to the castle today. It's beside the castle.
And it has a cannonball.
Well, the esplanade hadn't been built by 1745.
Uh-huh.
So everything was a little bit different, but this building was there. Today, it looks like a beautiful restaurant. The food looks amazing.
Oh.
But like you sit in the restaurant and you're looking at the castle.
That's pretty cool, isn't it?
But if you look at the front of the building, there's a cannonball lodged into the stone.
That does ring a bell.
It's like you can see it. I've seen photos. I had to check. I'm like, how have I never noticed this?
That's
but
wild.
You can see it. Now, there's some disagreement. Some people don't think it was during 1745 that this happened. Some people do. There's some debate. But there is a cannonball in the building.
That's crazy.
That was fired from the castle at some point.
Thunk. Mm-hmm. Oh, I guess that lives there now.
So I really want to go have dinner there.
I know. Absolutely. Not least if it's nice.
It looks amazing.
Yeah.
I had to look at the website and I want to go. But it looks like the kind of place we would need to go for like an anniversary.
An event, okay.
Because it looks fancy.
It's fancy.
How cool is that?
That's really cool.
So after this, things continued to escalate. More cannons were fired. Homes were destroyed. People were killed. Some of them civilian who were treated as collateral damage.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the big failings of the Jacobite forces from the beginning of this siege was that they just didn't have the firepower to answer when the castle fired its cannons at them.
See, now, I was thinking the Jacobites didn't have much in the way of, like, cannons and siege equipment.
No, they absolutely didn't. They didn't have any big guns.
Bring out the big guns.
They really didn't have any of that.
Mm-hmm.
So the castle's firing cannons at them and they can't really do that much about it.
And they had thoughts and prayers.
Yeah. And a prince in a palace.
It's not great.
No. Interestingly, one of the houses that was demolished seemed to have been deliberately fired upon because it was manned by Jacobites. But the Jacobites inside were from Edinburgh. They weren't Highlanders.
Uh-huh.
One of them was a shoemaker. And they had joined the cause. They lived in Edinburgh. But it seems like when they learned about this in the castle that they weren't real Highlanders, they weren't as scared of them, so they fired the cannons on the house.
That's funny, isn't it?
They weren't as worried about the repercussions or anything.
Uh-huh.
They weren't as scared because they weren't the Highlanders.
The Highlanders.
Yeah.
The scary Highlanders.
And many of the men who were in this house were killed in this attack or taken prisoner after the fact.
Yeah.
So they just weren't as concerned.
It's so funny.
Isn't it?
Super interesting.
You wouldn't think it would matter.
No. It really paints a picture of the image Highlanders had.
Certainly the reputation that they had built over time, which I imagine is what they wanted.
Yes, in this case.
With them, well, they were on the back foot so often with equipment and funding and weapons.
Mm-hmm.
Their reputation is really all they have.
Yep. This kind of...
If you can instill fear, you can instill disorder.
Exactly. This idea of fear that preceded them.
Mm-hmm. So I thought that was interesting.
That is really interesting.
On the night of October 4th, government soldiers snuck out of the castle and started setting fire to homes. The ones closest to the castle that were remaining.
East.
Trying to root out the Jacobites from where they were staying.
Mm-hmm.
And the same night they dug in new trenches. And this meant that they were able to fire their guns right the way down High Street.
Ooh, nasty.
Which is crazy to think of now.
Yeah, it is.
The constant firing that the castle was able to do was incredibly wearing and dangerous. They had the ammo to just fire whenever they wanted. And the many, many deaths that happened over the next couple of days led to Bonnie Prince Charlie conceding to the government forces, allowing them to communicate with the town again.
Yeah, well, that's a good call.
To remember that was sort of being negotiated and argued about. He conceded to their demands.
Well, he doesn't really have anywhere to go from here, does he?
No, so many people are dying and people are getting really mad.
And it's not like, oh, we concede now, but just wait and nothing will change. We'll just, I don't know. They'll come around.
Yeah.
They'll come around.
Well, speaking of the waiting, it seems like because the guns and all of the weapons were being fired almost like manically quickly. They're being fired all the time, and this big push was apparently done to make the castle seem like they were more desperate for the siege to end than they actually were. This was a plan by Joshua Guest, who thought, okay, we'll fire as if we are struggling on the inside, we have nothing left, to make them think that we need the siege to end. They're going to think that, they're going to stay here longer and siege the castle and spend more time here, even though we can take it. And this will stop them from moving further south towards London.
Very nice.
So he'd gotten advice from London. It seems like that's what he was told to do. But thought, if they thought they could win the siege quickly, they would stay. And it would stop them marching south.
Yeah, I like it. I like it.
But yeah, the castle wasn't short on anything. They were fine.
It's all right, isn't it?
But if the Jacobites were attacking Edinburgh, they weren't attacking London.
Yes. Which is notably deficient of castles.
No, not at all. There's castles in London.
Is there castles in London?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, well, I guess because a lot of them are like royal palaces and things now, but...
Oh, I guess I think of the word palace more.
Yeah, they've been changed in their purpose and their style, but there's a lot in London and the surrounding area.
Oh, well, never mind that.
But, it's a big place.
Yes.
But Edinburgh's kind of being used as a sacrificial lamb for London.
Well, that sounds familiar, doesn't it?
After communication was opened between the castle and the town, the crazy bombardment stopped, and things were reportedly pretty peaceful again.
Good.
Everything calmed down. And on the 1st of November, the Jacobites left Edinburgh completely to embark on their fateful march into England.
Well, it's funny they just sort of gave up.
Well,
moved on.
Maybe I'm wrong here, but this siege was kind of pointless.
Yeah.
Nothing was achieved.
Even had he got the Scottish crown jewels, I don't think it would have made any difference.
Well, no, you can't... I'm trying to think of the words. It would be very difficult for him to keep Edinburgh Castle.
Well, yeah.
So is it really worth trying to take?
To keep it and charge on through the country.
Well, yeah, because his big thing was he wanted London.
Mm-hmm.
And we all know how that went.
Yes.
But that is the 1745 siege, and this was the last time the castle was besieged.
Oh, everyone learned from his mistake.
Yeah, just what are we doing? Why are we doing this?
What are we even trying to do? The whole place is a giant military factory.
Just churning out soldiers.
Churning out soldiers and guns. That's not a good place to attack.
Mm-mm.
When you can't win.
Well, they didn't have the guns. You need guns.
You need the guns.
I'm talking like cannons.
Not just big biceps. I mean, they wouldn't go amiss. You need to load the cannon somehow.
They wouldn't hurt. So we know that the rising was squashed in 1746.
Mm-hmm. The dough failed to rise.
Yes, and there was no imminent threat anymore. So in 1753, the Esplanade was built, which I was just talking about, which is huge, big... It's not a walkway. It looks like a bridge, but it's just a big paved courtyard outside the castle.
Yep.
This was built in 1753.
It's like a really pimpin' patio.
No, it isn't. That's a lie you just told. But it is very grand looking.
Yes.
And because there's no threat, there's no worry that this is just inviting people to attack the castle.
Yep, that stands to reason.
Because before that, this was where executions were happening. It was very rugged and just exposed terrain.
Yeah.
Which would make it difficult for an invading force to reach the front gates.
Rather than a nice big plateau for them to organise on.
Yes, exactly. Now, you're going to be upset by this, Kieran.
What have you got? What are you going to tell me?
In 1754, Mons Meg was removed from Edinburgh Castle and taken down to the Tower of London.
No!
Yep.
What?
Well, they were worried about just any chance of Jacobites getting a hold of weapons like this. Like, there was lots of laws introduced that people in the Highlands couldn't carry weapons of any kind.
Yep, which we talked about.
So this was kind of an extension of that. The government didn't want to take any chances with this massive, massive big gun, so she was wheeled down to London.
Very, very slowly. Well, that's a shame.
Mm-hmm.
But she must have been wheeled back again.
Well, we'll get there.
Uh-huh.
We'll get there.
Let's see, 9 miles a day. I want to say it's like 500 miles.
Well, I don't know if she was maybe put on a ship.
Oh, that would make more sense.
I'm not sure how it was done exactly. That was my assumption. Wheeled down to Leith and then...
Yeah, that would make a
Off on a
lot more
ship.
sense.
But, you know, we've seen the luck that they've had with ships between London and Edinburgh, so...
Well, imagine the pirates got it. That'd be worse.
I mentioned it briefly last episode. We didn't get to it then. But the castle was used to detain prisoners of war, sort of from this time onwards.
Yes.
And in the late 1700s, there was the American War of Independence, and the Revolutionary and the Napoleonic Wars with France. Pardon me. So lots of prisoners of war were held at the castle between 1793 and 1815 in particular.
Yes. Good place to keep prisoners.
Yeah, they've got the space and they've got the appropriate skills and equipment.
Well, we've got the guards and the military here, so we're aight.
Mm-hmm. And they were kept in the vaults. They were used as prisons. Now, it's worth mentioning that after the 1715 and the 45 risings, Jacobite prisoners were held at the castle, some of them for years.
Yep.
The infamous Rob Roy was held prisoner at the castle in 1752.
Oh, wow.
But we'll talk about that in another episode, I think.
Sounds good.
But just know that there was a pretty daring jailbreak.
Oh, yes? Mm-hmm. I wondered if there'd be... I remember seeing about a jailbreak while we were there. While me and Eilidh visited the castle, but I didn't want to bring it up.
I've got to keep you coming back somehow, so we will talk about Rob Roy another time.
Yes.
The prisoners that I was talking about from the American and French wars came from lots of different countries, because lots of different nations were caught up in these wars.
Okay.
And this led to some conflict between prisoners, because there were communication breakdowns, or countries had their own squabbles. Yep. So lots of conflict happening there. They were kept in very close quarters. They didn't have a lot of room.
No, as we discussed.
Down there in the prison vaults, not a lot of ventilation. It was very dark, quite dirty. But prisoners of war had different conditions of imprisonment. So the conditions that they were living in were actually better than prisoners generally.
Oh, yeah?
Well, because there was the rules of war.
Ah, yes.
There were like minimum rations and minimum expectations of living conditions for prisoners of war.
Uh-huh.
So there was a standard, but it was still not a very nice place to be.
Yes.
Not least because Scotland's quite cold.
Ooh, that's a good point.
Typically the weather's not great, and these people weren't from Scotland.
Oh, no.
So, very drafty, cold castle, not a very nice place to be.
No.
If you ever go to visit the castle, there's graffiti engraved on some old wooden doors from the prison vaults that shows that these men came from all over.
Yeah, it's really cool.
You can look at it all. It's super, super interesting. Funnily enough, most of the prisoners who were held during this time were sailors.
Oh, yeah?
They were captured at sea and then brought to Edinburgh Castle.
Interesting.
There were even some prisoners who were taken during the American War of Independence who were Scottish.
That's a weird thought.
So they had emigrated to America.
Oh, wow.
Had joined the side of independence and fought against the British, were captured, and then taken back to Scotland.
To be captured in Edinburgh Castle.
Mm-hmm.
That's a weird thought.
Yep.
Living like royalty now.
Very strange irony there.
Yeah, there is. That's bizarre.
Mm-hmm. And we're not going to get to talk about much here because we're on part 1,000,000 of this saga. But Captain John Paul Jones was the, quote, father of the American Navy, unquote.
Ooh.
Fought against the British. He was also Scottish.
That's funny.
So there you go.
There you go.
During the French Revolutionary Wars, a 5-year-old boy was captured and held prisoner in the vaults.
5-year-old boy?
He was 5. He wasn't a general or anything.
I can imagine.
He was a drummer boy.
Oh, that makes sense.
And he was captured and he was held prisoner with the rest of the men. And I think he was held there for 6 years.
6 years?
Mm-hmm. Well, there was delays with getting him home. Scotland was quite far out of the... because it's not in Europe. So transfer of prisoners took a long time to negotiate, and then it was tricky to get them home.
That's true.
So he was there for quite a while.
Yeah.
Shame on them. A child in a prison. Jesus Christ.
Strange.
Right? A 5-year-old.
5-year-old in the same prison as all these grown men.
But there would be a camaraderie there.
That's true.
They're prisoners of war. I feel like it's different.
Yeah.
A lot of them are there with a common purpose, which I think helps.
Yes.
I'm not saying it's pleasant. I'm not saying it should have been allowed. But I think the circumstances being that little bit different are important.
Yeah, everyone getting everyone else through.
And they probably would have made a special effort to look after him.
Yeah, I guess you have to imagine so, don't you? Some people would have, not necessarily everyone, but...
I'm sure there would have been a few figures there who would have looked out for him, made sure he was okay.
Yeah.
Isn't that bad?
That is really bad.
According to the castle website, between 1757 and 1814, well over 1,000 prisoners were held in the labyrinth of vaults below Crown Square.
Ooh, a labyrinth of vault. Weird.
I didn't like it down there.
You didn't? Ailey got the vibe.
I got the feeling. I didn't like it.
That's some amount of prisoners.
And obviously not all there all at one time.
It wasn't 1,000 prisoners held for like 70 years.
No. But sometimes prisoners were brought to the castle in quite large groups all at once. Because when a ship was captured, an enemy ship, you would take all of the crew.
And they all get turned into pirates, yes.
And
that was at the start of the episode,
no,
I remember.
No.
No? No. But then where do the pirate ghosts come from?
For example, the crew of the Marquise de Lafayette, for example, all 140 of them came to Edinburgh Castle all at one time.
Goddamn. It's a lot of crew. A big old boat.
Quote, it is a ship. It's a ship. Quote, the French man of war was captured and sunk in the West Indies. The crew endured a 14-week voyage across the Atlantic in terrible conditions before eventually reaching Leith. One Edinburgh newspaper described the scene of the bedraggled and starving men marching to the castle as one of such misery and wretchedness as has never before been seen in this country. Unquote.
Kind of balances out they had like quite good conditionings under the POW laws.
Well, I guess that would only go so far on a ship crossing the Atlantic.
Well,
because everyone just has to stay alive.
Yes. Yeah, we have enough food for everyone on board. We don't have enough food for these 140 other people.
Yeah. So, I mean, maybe they sunk the ship after taking supplies.
Oh, well, probably, yeah.
I don't know. But yeah, there were the protections for prisoners of war. That's something that you've probably heard of before because it's continued into the present time. So the reconstructed prison you see when you go to Edinburgh Castle, those conditions are considerably better than the conditions that other prisoners had to endure over the time in Edinburgh Castle.
Oh no! How could you fit any more people in?
Like that was... The reconstruction that they've made is to the standards that the prisoners of war were kept there under.
Got ya. Yeesh. Well, that's not good at all.
And I mentioned in the last episode, I think, that prisoners who were kept in Edinburgh Castle sometimes crafted and sold items.
Yep.
I think it was in Crown Square, there was a gate and they could trade with people from Edinburgh. These prisoners of war were doing this too. And I think the things that are on display in the exhibit are possibly made by these prisoners of war.
Cool.
Rather than earlier. I'm not too sure.
Yeah, we mentioned last time how amazing they were.
Yeah. So I can't quite remember the timescale for them, but they were also doing this. As is to be expected with a cramped and miserable jail, comes Jailbreaks.
Ooh.
We love to see it.
We love it. We love everything about it. Did they use an appropriate sized rope ladder?
Well, these, funnily enough, were more successful than the Jacobites trying to get in.
I mean, if you can make the drop, getting out's always easier, isn't it? There's stairs up the inside of the wall.
But the Jacobites arguably had limitless resources.
That's true.
If you're breaking out of a prison, you have to use what you have in the prison.
You have only your guile. Your Argyle.
4 men managed to escape the castle in 1799. They were prisoners of the Napoleonic Wars. And they were just incredibly ballsy. They climbed down Castle Rock using a washing line.
Oof. That's a classic get out of jail, isn't it?
So they managed to get out of the vaults. But that's still a long way down.
Oh, that's a long way down.
Like, even though they're not having to scale from like high up on the castle, Castle Rock is still... I wouldn't want to do it.
No, and I know it's not like a modern day washing line, but it won't be very thick.
No, like a cord.
Yeah, to hold on to. And to hope it will hold all 4 of your weight. It's brave.
Have to hope the person like up above you doesn't slip.
Ooh, no.
But they managed it.
Fully escaped? Never seen again?
Nope.
Wow.
I think they were French.
Amazing.
They escaped. Then, again, in 1799, 2 more French prisoners managed to escape.
Ah, these pesky Frenchmen.
They were keen. They were getting after it. They managed to saw through the bars that covered their window.
Wow.
Using a blade that they had managed to smuggle in and hide.
Oh, that sent like a shiver up my spine. The thought of that, like metal on metal.
Well, I'm assuming they were metal. They might not have been. Maybe they were wooden. But that seems silly because it'd be very easy to escape wooden bars.
It depends how thick they were, I suppose, because you can't break like a short wooden bar very easily.
No, but you could like whittle it away.
Yeah, well, even with like...
You wouldn't have to do it quickly. You could just...
Yeah, even with like your finger, like
Yeah.
just your fingernail just kind of scratched away, possibly.
But they use a blade to cut through the bars. And they tied a rope around a cannon
Nice.
and again climbed down Castle Rock.
Oh, good work.
Ballsy.
It's ballsy.
Smart to use a cannon as an anchor.
Yep.
Very heavy.
And they'd be familiar with anchors being seamen.
True.
So,
True.
you know.
Yeah, I'm sure that was their exact thought. Thank God we know how to use anchors.
Yeah, because if they weren't of the sea, they wouldn't know what an anchor was.
No,
so.
they wouldn't. They wouldn't. You're right.
Yeah.
You're absolutely right.
Thank you.
These two prisoners, managed to meet up with 2 other escaped French prisoners from the castle. And they found shelter with a church minister, until they were able to get a ship at Leith the next day. So
Very
they
nice.
sailed back to France.
Just went back. Well, there you go.
It's smart. Like staying low key that's the thing. That's how you manage it. You don't draw attention to yourself. Always helpful if you have someone on the outside that can help.
Well, going to a minister is clever, isn't it?
Well, I don't know if they planned that. I don't know if they just kind of took the chance on him, because I don't know if they were staying in his home or the church.
Yeah.
Because if someone in need comes to the church, they'd be more inclined to help without questions on the basis that you help everyone.
Ah, bedraggled Frenchman. What could you possibly be doing here?
Where could you have come from with these shackle burns on your wrists?
Ooh, shackle burns.
I don't know if they had them.
I don't know.
Later, in 1811, there was another jailbreak.
It's not as many as I thought, considering there was 1,000 in it. Here, what do they do?
Well, I would like you to take a guess at how many of them managed to escape in this jailbreak.
6.
6?
That's it. That's the full guess.
You're not going to elaborate?
No.
Okay.
Well, presumably I was going to say 2. But I'm like, well, it's probably more than 2. That wouldn't be very fun to guess, which is the same again.
It's more than 2.
So, but like 20, that seems like a lot. I feel someone would notice.
That's a big crowd.
So, going 6.
6. Half a dozen. A cool half dozen.
Yep.
49 prisoners escaped the castle
God
in
damn.
1811.
That's a fair few to not notice. Did they march out, and because they were marching, people just let them go past?
It's like wearing high vis.
Yeah.
Become invisible.
In like a perfect square as well, like a 7x7 grid row. Just marched out the door.
Well, the details were a bit scarce. I couldn't find out too much about this, but they managed to get out of the vaults, so the prisons underneath, and they made their way to one of the ramparts of the castle, called the Devil's Elbow Rampart.
Very nice.
So it's like a battlement type, like a tower. And they dug their way through the stone wall.
Ooh.
They created a tunnel out of the rampart and used that to escape.
That's good going.
I checked the map of the castle to try and suss out how they could do it, and the prisons are quite near one of the like exterior walls of the castle. So if they could just leave the vaults, they wouldn't have to cross the whole castle complex to get out. It's not like they were held in the middle. They were already quite close to the edge.
Yeah.
So it's just a case of cracking through this one wall, which they did.
I would have thought that'd be hard, though.
Well, you can still see the hole that they dug in the stone.
Wow.
It's still there.
Did we look at it?
I don't think so.
I don't remember that. That's cool, though.
Unfortunately, all of the prisoners ended up being recaptured.
No.
Although some of them made it as far as Falkirk.
Oh, that's good work.
They tried. They got damn near.
Falkirk. Okay, I got that wrong in my head about why are they going north? But no, that's not. France is the other way, dickhead.
So judgy.
Hell yeah.
I don't see you breaking out of prison.
How do you think I got here?
She says like it's a bad thing.
You never break out of prison for me.
For me. Well, Falkirk is marginally north of Edinburgh.
I thought it was partway between Edinburgh and Glasgow.
It is, but it's like north between them.
Oh, okay.
But it's following the water. So if they're trying to get a ship, not a boat, a ship, out of the country, they're following the coast.
That makes sense.
To do that.
Fair warning, I've clicked my pen in and I have to let it go.
We couldn't get through the end of the season without you mucking about with that bloody pen. Now, there was another jailbreak that was pretty wild, shrouded in legend. But I'm going to save that for our spooky segment. I'm not going to talk about that here.
Oh, okay.
Just a little teaser for you.
Gotta stay tuned.
Keep you interested. In 1799, the new barracks were built in the castle. So changes were being made. There were still prisoners of war there, but other things are happening at the same time. Up until this point, like we talked about, the Great Hall had been used as barracks.
Yep.
But now there were new barracks for soldiers to sleep in, and the Great Hall actually became a hospital.
Well, that makes sense.
I think it's a pretty good conversion. It's a really good use for such a big space.
Big open space, yeah.
Yeah.
Lots of like air and things, so it wouldn't get really stuffy. Nice, nice.
Well, we're now into the 1800s.
That would come after 1799, wouldn't it?
It's taken us a while to get here, but we've made it.
I fact checked you. I've got you back.
Thanks.
It must be quieter from here at the castle.
Somewhat. I have sort of little stories for you.
Until World War I, at least.
In 1817, the future George IV signed a royal warrant.
Oh.
And this warrant gave permission for a search to be carried out for the honours of Scotland.
Oh. Are they still missing?
We're here again. We're talking about them again. Yes.
George lost his crown jewels, eh?
Well, I think at this time he was Prince George, but he would become King George IV.
Yep.
He signed the warrant before he was king. Bonnie Prince Charlie had wanted them, but he never got the castle, so he never got the jewels. And like I said, the door to the crown room had been walled up back in 1707, when the Treaty of Union was signed.
Well, this is another 70 years later. It's a long time.
Not from 1707. It's over 100 years.
I meant 1745
Oh,
with Bonnie
right,
Prince
yeah.
Charlie.
Sorry, I thought you meant Like, that's not how maths works.
Well, we're over 100 years then.
Yes.
That is enough time for it to become lost.
Well, yeah, they had just walled up the crown room because they thought that was the safest thing to do, and just left them there, trusting that the people who had left them there had done the job properly.
Yep.
And unfortunately, the Scottish crown jewels were kind of seen as unnecessary because the crowns had been united and the English crown jewels were in use.
They're way better.
For coronations and all of that malarkey. So these ones didn't have to be rolled out all the time.
They're just the royal back scratchers.
Kinda, yeah. So over the 100 years or so, they had kind of fallen out of thought because they're just in a bricked up room that no one goes into. Some people might not even know is there. And over time, people started not even really knowing if they were there at all.
Yeah.
Or where they might be. So they become something of a mystery.
That's weird, isn't it? The story of the One Ring from Lord of the Rings.
Kinda, yeah.
That which should not have been forgotten was lost.
For now, none now live who remember it.
That's what happened.
On the 28th of October, 1817...
A fine day of the year.
Best day of the year. George IV gave permission for the crown room to be broken into, because they're going to have to knock walls down to get in there.
I think they still know it's the crown room.
Yes, they do. In order to retrieve the crown jewels, which may or may not be in there. They didn't even know. It was a pretty big group of all men who were present when the wall was broken through on the 4th of February 1818.
What did they find?
Well, one of these men was Sir Walter Scott, who, as part of his writing career and his general reputation, was bringing the romanticism of Scotland and its somewhat rewritten history, as far as he's concerned, to the forefront of cultural trend and interest. And finding the Scottish crown jewels was part of that.
Absolutely.
He wrote about what happened that day in a letter because he was there, and I will read you a little bit of it now.
I'm pretty sure this is how the mummy's curse comes out, so we should be careful.
The extreme solemnity of opening sealed doors of oak and iron and finally breaking open a chest which had been shut since the 7th of March 1707, about 111 years, gave a sort of interest to our researches, which I can hardly express to you. And it would be very difficult to describe the intense eagerness with which we watched the rising of the lid of the chest.
You can tell he's a writer.
Yeah. But it was incredibly exciting. They were there for this historic moment, opened the chest, and, according to him, saw all of the crown jewels and things laid as they had been laid 100 years earlier. They were exactly the same. They'd been untouched inside this massive big chest. And you have to assume it's one of those moments where you're in it and you're paying attention, but you're trying to take it all in, knowing this is important and this is never going to happen again. So I have to remember everything.
Take in every detail. Then you'd start thinking about how you need to be paying attention, and you just kind of get lost in it, wouldn't you?
How cool is that?
Oh, to be there when that was happening. Oh.
They had to break back in and find them again.
That's badass.
In 1822, 4 years later, the now King George IV came to visit Scotland, which was kind of a peacemaking mission, somewhat, trying to mend the dodgy relationship between the Hanoverian royals and the Scots.
Yep.
Since things hadn't been great for quite a long time.
Yes.
You can see the result of all the Jacobite risings for more info on that one.
Further details. I was just thinking, imagine breaking down the wall into this 100-year-old sealed up room and seeing a pair of glasses. Like a pair of reading glasses that somebody accidentally left in there when it got bricked up.
I thought you meant instead of everything else, like some kind of message. I'm like,
no.
What does that mean?
Just like sat on top of the chest was just like somebody's watch. Or like their glasses, you know.
You'd be so mad.
Where did I put them?
One glove. I tell you what though, can you imagine if they broke in, opened the chest, it's empty. Except for one white Jacobite rose sitting at the bottom.
Now that would have been something. That would have been fantastic. That's much more romantic than my idea, which was they lift it up and it's a jack-in-the-box that scares them.
Jacobite in the box. So yes, in 1822, George is visiting Scotland. He's trying to mend relationships because things hadn't been great. And he visited Edinburgh Castle on this visit, which was the first time it had even been visited by a reigning monarch since 1651, when Charles II visited for his coronation.
They didn't even visit?
No. They hadn't visited the castle in about 200 years.
Oh, and people, they wonder why people in Scotland aren't totally stoked on them. Oh, just so upsetting. So rage-inducing. Gah!
Now, it's around this time that tartan was more widely adopted again.
Yep.
Because George quite liked it. He just liked the look of tartan. It had been banned after the Rising, so this was a very big deal that it's entering mainstream culture.
Absolutely.
And it's accepted again. So things are a-changing.
Uh-huh.
And I read that there was a mass recruitment of Highlanders into the British Army, which was also used as a way to sort of mend the divide between North and South. They were once feared, but now the Highlanders were sought after to join British regiments because of the figure they struck on a battlefield.
Because of all
kilted and everything.
Because of all the reasons they were feared.
Yeah, exactly. But now they're on the side of the British.
Yep.
So things are very different.
Well, good. It's better to be at peace than to be at war.
Well, I mean, they're joining the army to go to war.
There's not extra war. It's okay. I stand by it. It still holds up.
The point I'm trying to make is that the wider perception of Scotland is changing a lot
Yes.
in the 1800s. Tourism is becoming a thing. Trains are becoming operational throughout the 1800s towards the 1900s. People could travel. Things are changing quite rapidly. Further to the broadening of this national pride, Mons Meg was returned in
Yay.
1829.
Woo!
1829.
Just shifting around this giant broken cannon.
And she was given a military escort when she was returned on the 9th of March.
God damn.
Huge crowds lined the street of Edinburgh, like watching her come home. It was a huge thing.
Who's here? Somebody called Meg? I'm not sure. She must be a queen or something.
A massive cannon.
It's funny, it was never just decommissioned.
Nope. Oh, well, I mean, it couldn't be fired.
Or, never, taken apart, melted down and used for something else, or...
They just didn't want the Jacobites to fix it, I think.
I mean, that's a wise call, to be fair.
Yes. In 1838...
I think the Jacobites would have shot their own foot off it if they had repaired it.
Someone would have lost all the cannonballs, gunpowder would be spilled everywhere.
Whoa, no.
Everyone would be drunk. I'm just speaking from personal experience.
Well, yeah.
In 1838, something a bit more unusual was brought into Edinburgh Castle.
A lion.
No, an elephant.
Oh. I was close.
Closer than I think you thought. Yeah, much more unexpected than a massive old cannon. In 1838, the 78th Highlanders returned from what's now Sri Lanka, and they brought back their beloved elephant.
Well, that's pretty cool.
Which went on to live in Edinburgh Castle.
I can't imagine what seeing an elephant would be like.
Oh, back then.
Back then, yeah.
Because even now, they're quite awe-inspiring, just the size of them.
Mm-hmm. But you at least
can watch TV and things now.
Yeah, you know what they look like. Different seeing it in person still, but to go in from never having heard of an elephant to going, what the fuck is that thing? It's like a moving building.
That's bigger than my house.
Why does it have a giant dick in its face?
Such a man thing to say. According to Hidden Scotland, it soon developed a taste for beer and used to reach its trunk through the canteen window for a taste of his favourite ale.
That's really funny.
Ain't that just like an elephant? Makes sense if he's sort of living in soldiers' barracks. Seems kind of inevitable, I think.
We had an episode on Patreon about Wojtek the bear, and it was very similar. He got quite a taste for beer.
Mm-hmm. Such a good story.
Such a good story.
Joining the Patreon might be worth it just to hear about Wojtek the bear.
Yeah.
He was later, though, I think.
Yes. Okay, because he was World War II.
Yeah. About 100 years later. This elephant took part in parades and was apparently head of the marching band.
Very cool.
Which seems appropriate.
Yes, absolutely. He has a trumpet.
The 78th Highlanders love their elephants so much, although I can't find a name for this elephant anywhere, which annoys me because I reckon he definitely had one.
Oh, absolutely.
The elephant was used in the official insignia for the regiment.
Oh.
And its toes are still in the National War Museum in the castle.
I don't recall seeing any elephant toes while I was there.
That's because we didn't see the National War Museum, my love.
Ah.
We didn't have time.
That makes sense. I mean, easier to keep its toes than keep any other part of it, I suppose.
When we went to the Loch Ness Centre last weekend, they had an elephant trunk.
They did.
And they had the elephant toe ashtray.
Yeah, that's really good. They had a picture of the ashtray, I think.
Oh, I thought they had the ashtray. We saw anyway, at least a picture of it, and they definitely have an elephant trunk, because we were laughing.
Yep. Because you walk in and you're like, is that an elephant trunk?
Is that a penis? In the 1840s, a dog cemetery was created and in use at the castle, which I don't want to linger on because it's sad, but, you know, Edinburgh Castle is still a military base. Lots of soldiers there, and quite often they had dogs as their mascots of their regiment. They had pets and things, so they were so beloved they created a dog cemetery for them.
Well, that's nice, I think. Yeah.
Just makes me want to cry.
You won't bum everyone out with dead dogs?
No.
Maybe ghost dogs.
In 1842, the military prison was built.
Ooh.
Which is cheery. So this wasn't for prisoners of war. This was for soldiers who were stationed at the castle who misbehaved.
Oh, I see.
Broke the rules. They would be kept in the military prison.
For being naughty.
Yes. If they were sent to the military prison, then they'd, quote, be held in solitary confinement and compelled to do 4 hours of hard punishment a day, such as carrying cannonballs from one place to another.
Oofed.
Unquote.
Brutal.
A bit soul-destroying.
Yeah. I bet you could pay for that experience at like a retreat now.
Lifting cannonballs.
Lifting cannonballs. A like silent exercise retreat.
So just like the soldiers who were drunk on duty used to do. Between 1842 and 1886, lots of renovations were happening at the castle, generally. Inspired partly because Queen Victoria kept coming to visit, and they kept having to impress her. So
good old Queenie.
They're working on the castle so that it's fit for her to come and visit.
Fair.
It was in 1886 that the Great Hall was restored to what it had been before Cromwell. So it's not the hospital anymore. It's more like the Great Hall you see today.
The big, giant ceilings.
Yes. And in 1887, the Argyll Tower was built, which I told you about in a couple episodes ago. It was named after the 9th Earl of Argyll. He's the one who had the great sleep before he had his head chopped off.
Yes.
This is where he supposedly spent the night, but this tower was built on that spot, but the tower didn't exist when the Earl of Argyll was there.
I'm with you. Was it named after him, the tower?
Yep.
It seems weird to name it after someone who was hung, executed.
Yep.
Odd choice.
Yeah. By the time the 1900s came around, Edinburgh Castle had changed its purpose once again. Because now it wasn't purely a military hub. It wasn't just a fortification to see off invaders. In 1905, responsibility for the castle was taken from the War Office and given to the Office of Works.
Oh.
We've talked about them before because they're now known as Historic Scotland.
Oh, okay.
And they still have responsibility for the castle and lots of other sites around Scotland. So they received the castle in 1905.
Very good. To kind of start, not restoring it, preserving it.
Yeah. And having it more as a tourist attraction rather than a working military base.
Yeah. Was it still partially a military base?
Yes, in part. In 1909, the Redford Barracks were being built in the south of Edinburgh, so away from the castle. Because the soldier barracks and things in the castle, they weren't fit for purpose anymore. They were dated. They just didn't suit. So they were in the process of moving soldiers out of the castle at this time.
Very good.
It wasn't until 1912 that the remnants of David's Tower were finally rediscovered.
Oh, wow. Rediscovered, I guess, were they just kind of under the floor?
Well, the Half Moon Battery had been built on top of the remains of the tower.
Yes.
The tower had fallen in the Lang Siege, which was in 1573.
Mm-hmm.
So it had been completely hidden. People had forgotten about it until 1912.
Wow. Because you can go and see it now if you go to the castle.
Yep.
You go down a little set of stairs and it is there.
It looks just kind of like a foundation that's left, with some walls. The castle guidebook describes what's left as a shattered stump, which I think is quite evocative.
Ooh, yeah, that's very descriptive as well. I like that. That's some excellent word choice from whoever wrote that.
Having seen it, I'm like, yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Huh.
Now, even though the Redford barracks had been started, they weren't finished by 1914, which is when the First World War broke out, like you were saying. And this meant that Edinburgh Castle returned to active service as a, quote, recruiting depot, training centre, hospital and prison.
Well, that makes sense.
Yeah.
You'd have the space for all of that, wouldn't you?
And it's very central.
Yes.
It's
Especially
right
for
in the centre of town.
And very morale-inspiring, signing up at the
And
castle.
kind of intimidating for use as a prison.
Yeah.
Like, that was always part of it, that you didn't want to be there under those circumstances.
And I think a lot of the World War One was volunteer-based.
Yes, the
initially.
draft happened later. It was volunteer to begin with. So yeah, they wanted people to join up. They were trying to recruit.
Head up to the castle to enlist. Pretty cool.
Subject of like national pride, doing it for your country. It does make sense.
Yeah.
Now, in 1916, believe it or not, Edinburgh was bombed by a German Zeppelin airship.
It was bombed by who?
The Germans.
Oh.
I didn't realise this had happened. This was news to me.
No, I didn't think Edinburgh received much bombing. I thought it was more down south, and Glasgow possibly, because there was lots of shipyards in Glasgow.
Well, there wasn't as much bombing in the First World War generally.
Oh, am I just thinking of the Second World War?
No, this is 1916.
Oh.
I'm saying it was a Zeppelin airship. It wasn't a plane.
I was thinking of planes and stuff, but I'm thinking of the Second World War.
Yeah, well, you had the Blitz during World War II down in London, and Glasgow got it quite a lot because of industry and like the shipyards there.
Yeah.
But yeah, in 1916, Edinburgh was bombed.
By a Zeppelin.
Yeah. And it was pretty bad. 13 people were killed, 24 people were injured, and one of the bombs that was dropped actually hit Castle Rock.
Wow.
And exploded.
That's wild. They're just, I get why they worked, but just it's not very threatening to see a Zeppelin to me, because they're just inherently hilarious. But knowing it was full of bombs would, of course, be very intimidating. Yeah.
I think were all the air raid sirens and things going off and you were having to take cover, don't think you'd laugh at the sight of an airship.
No.
Now, this all happened on the 2nd of April, 1916. 23 bombs were dropped in total, and they hit both Edinburgh and Leith. Because remember, Leith was an important dock, so it made it a target. At 7 p.m. on the 2nd, the air raid sirens started going off, warning people of the raid. And according to the National Records of Scotland, police in Leith and the City of Edinburgh instituted air raid precautions. The Electric Light Department lowered all lights, traffic was stopped, and lights on vehicles were extinguished. The Central Fire Station and the Red Cross were notified, and all policemen, regular and specials, were called up.
Oh man.
Terrifying.
Terrifying.
So this was around 7 p.m, and the bombs started actually dropping at around midnight that night. So people had a bit of warning.
Yeah.
But, you know, you're getting ready for bombs.
5 hours of anticipation as well. That's a long time.
Not knowing really what's going to happen.
No.
So here's what happened, again from the National Records of Scotland. The first few bombs landed in and around Leith docks, damaging business premises and the quays and breaking a large number of windows in shops, offices and dwelling houses. 2 bombs landed in Commercial Street, one killing Robert Love in bed in his top floor flat at number 2, and the other falling through the roof of number 14 into a room occupied by an old woman and through the floor of her house into the house underneath, where it burst into flame.
Oh my god.
The old woman referred to calmly got out of bed and poured water through the main hole made by the bomb and extinguished the fire.
That's very, very reminiscent of the cannon through the skirt, isn't it?
She's just like, oh, well, need to put this fire out.
I should do something about that.
There's a hole in my floor.
That's what your granny would do.
That is what my granny would do. A further explosive bomb fell on the roof of a whiskey bond belonging to Innes and Grieve, wholesale spirit merchants, setting fire to the bond, which was entirely destroyed.
What's a bond in this case?
I think whiskey storage.
Yeah.
I think.
Oh, that's a successful place to hit with a bomb.
20 bombs fell on Leith that night, killing 2 people.
Well, not that many, all things considered.
Yeah, as good as you could hope for. The closest bomb that fell to Edinburgh Castle missed it by about 400 yards. This is the one that hit the rock. And as a result of this raid, the air raid precautions in Edinburgh and Leith were improved and tightened because they saw what happened. One of the craziest things that happened that night was there was this woman in Leith who gave birth to her daughter at home while the raid was happening.
Oh my god.
And she's mentioned in a report by a policeman, I think. They had to appeal to a military tribunal because they had to move her out of her flat into her basement to keep her and the baby safe.
Oh.
So they had to explain why they were moving around and breaking
yes.
precautions. Obviously, because she was scared for herself and her baby. But it seems they were okay, but she suffered a lot from PTSD after the fact.
I'm not surprised.
Which happened to a lot of people. And she and her husband named their daughter Catherine O'May Campbell Raida Smith.
Raida,
Raida. Seemingly to mark surviving the raid.
Yeah.
Because this wasn't a family name.
That's nicely done. That's quite a subtle way to do it.
Raida.
Than like bombed. People just call me da bomb.
Isn't that wild?
That is wild.
Raida bomb. No, you da bomb. So back to the castle. We were sort of focusing on Leith there.
Yes.
But that's the thing that happened. In the 1920s, the National War Memorial was opened, commemorating those who were lost in the First World War. It's still there. You can go visit. It's very sombre and moving, but obviously now it commemorates people and service animals from lots of other conflicts, not just World War One.
Yeah. Horrible.
Yeah, it's very sombre. A very sombre place to visit.
It's beautiful though. The tributes are stunning.
It is, yeah.
It's quite a place to go in and walk around.
A lot of work has been put into doing it properly, I would say.
I can't remember how long it took to finish, but it was a long time it was under construction.
Yeah. It opened in 1927. In 1929, 2 bronze statues were cast and placed on the very front of the castle. There's a statue of Robert the Bruce on one side of the front gate and a statue of William Wallace on the other.
Very nice.
They're very cool. I really enjoyed seeing them when we went.
So patriotic.
And they were placed on the 600th anniversary of Robert the Bruce's death.
Yeah.
He died in 1329.
Wow. I wonder how I could get me a bronze statue of myself.
Earn some money.
Put it by the front door. What do you think? Get one of you. We can be on either side.
Why don't we get one of the dog?
Oh, better.
Well, that I would be up for. Because he's very regal.
Yep.
He would fit a bronze statue, I think.
I think so. When we were in Leith Hall, there was what looked like a bronze head on the wall of a dog, and that dog looked a lot like Odin.
Like a bust. See, it would just fit. I posted a photo of our Labelle Rebelle merch, and he's in one of those photos, and he's sitting like a prince. He's like...
He is.
with his head pointing up, just like, oh, yes.
Adore me.
Take my portrait.
You may paint me.
I would get a bronze statue of the dog.
Fair.
In 1939, World War II broke out, as we know. Edinburgh Castle didn't see action in the sense that no combat happened there, but a Luftwaffe plane was shot down over the Firth of Forth.
Oh, yeah.
By a a British plane. The Luftwaffe pilots survived. They didn't die in the crash. And they were taken to Edinburgh Castle because it was being used as a hospital.
Wow.
During World War II. It seems very civil. Like, they were cared for the same as anyone else. And then I think they were held as prisoners of war, which was common. But the British pilots who shot them down in the Firth actually came to visit them while they were in hospital.
Really? That's strange.
I don't think sportsmanship is the word, but there seems to be a, like, shared experience they have.
Yeah, a mutual respect, almost.
Yeah, that's probably a better way of describing it.
As if they'd lost a duel rather than anything personal. I wonder what they talked about. Well,
I don't know.
If they managed to talk, if either of them had any of the other language.
Crazy.
That is crazy.
Now, a very cool thing happened at Edinburgh Castle in 1944. It didn't see combat in the war, but it did have a role to play in the war effort.
Okay.
This role was called Operation Fortitude North.
Fortitude North. All right.
Now, this is really clever. I was deep in the weeds researching this, but we can't get into every facet of it because that would just be silly.
Oh.
It's super clever. There was a series of false communications and broadcasts made from Edinburgh Castle in these like secret operation rooms that nobody knew about, implying that there was an army stationed at Edinburgh Castle.
Wow.
But this army didn't exist. It was
Amazing.
the Fourth Edinburgh Fourth Army. This army didn't exist. But they were making all of these communications and broadcasts knowing they would get intercepted.
Yep.
And trying to convince the enemy that there was an army based in Edinburgh.
Ooh, it's a risky game to play because what if it then gets bombed? You know?
So the reason for this was the Allies wanted to create the impression that they were planning an invasion of Norway, which at the time was held by the Germans.
Oh, okay.
They wanted to try and convince the Germans that they were going to invade north into Norway. And the reason they wanted to do this and give them this impression was because they were trying to mask the preparations happening for the D-Day landings in Normandy.
Wow.
Because the only way they were going to work was if the enemy didn't really, or I say the enemy, like their enemy, didn't fully understand the scale of the invasion.
That's fascinating. I didn't know Germany had Norway in World War II.
Yep. So these broadcasts were made from these secret rooms to try and lead the Germans to believe in this fake Norwegian invasion so that they would split their forces. So not as many of German forces would be, I said that terribly, so that there wouldn't be so many German forces in France. Some of them would be in Norway.
Fantastic.
And then the invasion happening at Normandy would have more success.
Oh, that is a bold play, but seems like it worked.
Well, they ran this. This was Operation Fortitude North, and there was Operation Fortitude South, which all came under Operation Bodyguard.
Okay.
And Fortitude South, they were doing the same thing, but they were dropping suggestions that, yep, there is a big invasion planned, but it's happening at Pas de Calais, not Normandy, so that they could break through lines at Normandy because there would be a smaller presence there. So you have multiple things happening at one time.
Yeah.
That they're just trying to drop fake clues. And these broadcasts to most people, they were fairly benign. Like, they were playing like pipe tunes, or they were announcing like events, like really mundane stuff. But they had these hidden codes in them, and they had let the hidden code be learned by the Germans.
Crazy.
And it worked.
Yeah?
Yet Hitler commanded 13 divisions to move from France into Norway.
Wow.
To prepare for this invasion by this army that never existed.
That's insane.
And it happened from Edinburgh Castle.
Oh, I did not know that.
That's where they were broadcasting from.
I didn't see that at the castle either. I feel they should definitely have like that displayed somewhere.
Well, maybe it's in the part that houses the National War Museum.
Oh, well, that makes sense.
We didn't have a lot of time when we went to the castle. we got there at about 4 and it closes at 6. So we didn't get a chance to see everything. This isn't a complaint on the castle's part.
No.
Because we didn't make round everything. We'll need to go back sometime. But isn't that incredible?
That's amazing.
And obviously, like, the Normandy D-Day landings happened and it helped lead to the end of the war.
Yeah.
It helped the Allies break through and make ground in France.
Amazing. I read somewhere that another reason the Normandy landings went so well is that they invaded in the morning and Hitler tended to sleep late into the afternoon and go into wild rages if he was woken up. So no one was allowed to wake him up, and he didn't wake up until 2, after which it was like slightly too late to get this urgent news that he would have had to do something about.
Wow.
As a little aside for you.
Well, there you go. That coupled with everything else.
Yeah, I'm sure that was minor in the scale of things.
But it was smart, I think, trying to lead forces into Norway, because there's no way those forces would reach France to be of any use.
No, not until much too late.
Because it was why they kind of hedged their bets by suggesting that there'd be this invasion at Pas de Calais, because Britain invading, or having an invasion launching from Britain into France, made the most logical sense because the Channel is not very far.
Yes.
So they were never going to fully convince them that they weren't even going to try to invade France. So they just said, oh, we are, but we're doing it over here.
We're going to pincer.
Not over there.
Yeah. Look at my right hand. Look at my right hand.
So there you go. A little bit of war history, which we don't really delve into much here.
No. Very nice. Very nice.
In the 1950s, the military tattoo started being held at Edinburgh Castle.
Oh, yeah.
Which, up until COVID, had been held there every year since. It's a big display of soldiers, pipers. I would like to go, I think. I'd like to see it.
I watched a DVD of it once when I was in a pipe band as a drummer, and they have lots of pipe bands.
So that started all the way back in the 50s, and it's held on the Esplanade outside the castle. It's currently being prepared for as we speak.
I was about to say, they were setting up for it when we were there.
Yeah, the big stands where everyone sits. In 1984, so we're jumping ahead a bit here, Mikhail Gorbachev visited Edinburgh Castle as part of a wider tour that he was doing to improve relations between Britain and the Soviet Union, because he was the leader of the Soviet Union at the time.
Yes.
And the Soviet Union would become Russia under his leadership. The Soviet Union dissolved.
Got you.
Now, it might seem strange that I'm talking about Gorbachev in the scheme of Edinburgh Castle, but something very interesting happened when it was decided that he was going to visit. In the Great Hall, which had been restored by this time, beside the really grand fireplace that's at one end of the room, there was a little hole in the wall, which was known as the Laird's Lug. And the purpose of it historically was that there's a little room behind the Great Hall where the monarch could disappear, but could hear what was going on in the Great Hall through the hole and could spy.
Cheeky.
So it had been there for a long time. This wasn't a new feature in the 80s. But the KGB got in touch with the castle before his visit and said, this needs to be bricked up before this visit can happen. We're not having this existing and him visiting the castle. So they had to brick it up. They had to close it.
Unreal. Because what purpose is it going to serve?
They were that, I don't even want to say paranoid, just like
diligent, I guess.
Thorough.
Yeah.
That this couldn't even exist if he was going to visit.
Maybe 100 years from now, one of the kings or princes will order for it to be broken down.
Maybe.
Uncover that one white glove that's in there.
Yes. Or like the one like really warm, cozy glove that was sorely missed. In 1989, so just a few years later, archaeologists who were working at the castle made a very grisly discovery.
Oh, I imagine there's a lot of them to be made at a castle.
Yeah, especially one this old. They discovered 15 skeletons under where the ticket stand is now.
Oh, no.
Outside the castle. And that's the reason they were found. They were building this new thing, so they were making sure there was nothing of importance in the ground and making sure everything was moved that needed to be. After investigating, the archaeologists said that these skeletons had been soldiers who died during the 1689 siege of the castle.
Wow.
When the Jacobites tried to defend the castle on behalf of King James.
Yes.
This is when George Gordon was in charge. And they reckon that these 15 men were buried here because the castle was under siege. So they weren't allowed into the town to give them a proper burial.
Uh-huh.
And I think the ticket stand bit is on the esplanade.
Yes.
Which wasn't there for another 70 years.
Oh. Well, you got to bury them somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
That would have been creepy to find, though.
Yeah.
It'd be even creepy to know, working in the ticket stand,
Yeah.
that you're standing on somewhere that was once a grave.
Well, I mean, if you're just on Castle Hill, there's hundreds of executions happen there.
That's true, eh?
So it kind of applies to everywhere just outside the castle.
Yeah, it's just...
So you might as well just crack on.
Yeah, up and down, you're probably standing on a dead person.
Yeah, especially in Edinburgh.
Yeah. Ugh.
Pretty grim, but it doesn't really surprise me.
No.
What's eerie, though, is that they were discovered in 1989. And it seems like they died in 1689.
I was just thinking that, exactly 300 years later.
Mm-hmm.
Spooky.
Bit spooky.
Bit spooky. It's quite sort of generally spooky.
Someone should write that down.
Uh-huh.
In 1995, Edinburgh Castle was made part of the UNESCO World Heritage Site of the Old and New Town of Edinburgh.
Hooray!
So it's a protected site now.
Good.
And then, in 1996, on the 700th anniversary of the year it was taken from the castle, the Stone of Destiny was returned to Edinburgh.
Yay! That's so late.
Mm-hmm.
So late, but it's there now.
It's in our lifetime.
I know.
We are both 90s babies.
We 2-year-old Kieran would have loved that.
And the stone left the castle very, very, very recently because it was part of the coronation of King Charles III.
Thankfully, they gave it back.
Yes, it has been returned. We checked.
And we mentioned in one of the other parts.
We definitely didn't steal anything. It has
Nope.
been returned.
The stone is exactly where you would expect to find it.
We went into the display and we saw that the stone is there.
It's certainly not under my chair.
No. Because it's not under mine either.
Mm-hmm.
Moving on. As of 2014, Edinburgh Castle is the second most visited tourist attraction in the whole of the UK.
Wow.
And it's second only to the Tower of London, and the castle attracts more than 1.4 million visitors a year.
That's a lot.
I mean, it was busy when we were there.
I was so busy. That's why you have to book your tickets, folks. That's why you have to book your tickets, folks.
Ah, folk.
Folk. Book your ticket or you're folked.
Yeah, it is seriously busy, and it's somewhere everyone always wants to go. Everyone wants to see the castle.
You do, though.
Now, with so many visitors, and so much history, and so much bloodshed, and upheaval.
There can't be any ghosts.
Oh, well, would it surprise you to learn that Edinburgh Castle is kind of filled to the gills with ghost stories?
Really? When there's 1.4 million people a year go there who might possibly report things, you're going to tell me there's ghosts?
You know, I was going to struggle to get this one past you. I could tell.
I don't believe you. We should end the episode there. Sorry, everybody.
No, we finally made it to the spooky section of the episode.
It's always a good time.
It's like the string section, but it's not as nice.
More ghastly.
Yeah. The short version is that people at Edinburgh Castle have experienced the following: apparitions, being touched and pulled, the feeling of being watched, shadowy figures, mists, green lights, sudden temperature drops, and people suddenly becoming overcome with emotion. So just about everything you could think of that is deemed paranormal.
Yep, it's a full roster of ghost encounters, isn't it? Well, the feeling of being watched. I can't see anyone ever being there alone long enough to feel like they were being watched who wasn't just being watched.
Okay, well, I'll address that one in a bit.
Okay.
I have an interesting encounter for you. I get what you're saying, though. That is a valid point.
Mm-hmm. As you're standing there with 1.4 million other people, but I feel like someone just brushed past me.
Okay, there's never 1.4 million people at the castle at one time. You are exaggerating for effect.
I'm exaggerating to prove my point, yes. A classic rhetoric device.
Well, I'm calling it because it's bullshit.
I think it worked perfectly.
I'm going to shove that pen.
Don't shove this pen.
Where the sun don't shine.
I was using its punctuation.
It's better than you just flipping me off, I guess.
Yeah, I guess, but now it's unclicked, so I have to click it again. Okay.
Oh, yeah, just about everything you could think of. Mm-hmm. In terms of unique, discernible spectres, there are a few that people have seen and experienced, rather than just feelings and sensations they can't explain.
I mean, I will eat this pen if people haven't said they see Mary, Queen of Scots there.
You eat your pen?
I will eat my pen.
Well, you're going to have to get ready, because no one has seen Mary, Queen of Scots at Edinburgh Castle.
Are you being serious?
Yes.
Really?
Yes.
She's seen literally everywhere else ever.
Well, she's certainly not one of the widely talked about ghosts that I have a list of here.
Oh man, I'll have to eat my pen.
Maybe someone has seen her that I don't know about. So get it round you.
Oh well.
Oh, stop it. The first ghost of Edinburgh Castle is the Grey Lady.
Okay.
Are you surprised? Because I wasn't.
Well, I mean, if Mary Queen of Scots is the spot there, I don't know. I don't know up from down anymore.
This Grey Lady has been seen, I think this is quite interesting. She's been seen in the older portions of the castle, not the new parts. She roams the corridors, dressed in clothing that seems to be from the 1500s.
Kind of grey looking.
Yes, she is grey looking, because she is the Grey Lady.
Yep, just clarifying.
By all accounts, from the people who claim to have seen her, she roams the halls weeping.
Oh, always spooky.
Very obviously in a lot of emotional pain, which makes me uneasy. Don't like that.
She know to go down to the vaults and prey on young women.
Why would she do that?
Oh, because you felt something spooky then.
Oh, I thought you meant a story from the history of the castle. I was like, what the fuck are you talking about? I didn't tell you that. You've gone out and gone your own information and been wildly misinformed.
DYOR.
Some people believe that this is the ghost of Janet Douglas, also known as Lady Glams, who we spoke about. She was executed as a witch for King James V's political gain.
Yep, I remember that, as a powerful woman.
So, yeah, basically. And to get back at her family.
Yeah.
It would make a lot of sense if it was her.
Yes.
A lot of anguish. Murdered unjustly.
Yep.
For a really shitty reason. Not that there's ever a good reason, but this is a particularly shitty reason.
Yeah. I wonder which came first, though. Did somebody recognise her from a painting? Or is it a wailing ghost? And they went, who could that be? Oh, well, this person was really tortured.
Well, I did say she appears to be dressed in clothing.
Ah, yes.
That would be worn in the 1500s.
So?
But this means that she has also been identified as Mary of Guise.
Oh.
Who was Mary, Queen of Scots' mother.
Again, that would make sense.
Well, her body was kept at St. Margaret's Chapel upon her death for quite a long time.
A little bit too long.
Because they couldn't get permission to have her body brought to France, which is where she wanted to be buried. So if we're looking at our ghost lore, having your last wishes ignored or delayed might have an impact.
You've got to assume so.
On whether you become a wee ghosty. Now, it's kind of gross, as a heads up, but apparently her body was kept wrapped in cloth and then inside a lead coffin.
Ooh.
Because they were struggling with the smell.
Yeah.
So
I did wonder.
She was there a long time.
Oh, it's just really gross to just think about.
Yeah. But, that might lead to a restless spirit.
That could equal ghost.
And a tick in the box in the Mary of Guys column is the fact that there's a ghost that's been seen at Glam's Castle that people think is Janet Douglas.
Oh, yeah.
We talked about it in our episode, but there's a ghost been seen in the chapel. And it's a woman who's in the chapel just quietly praying, from what I remember.
Yep.
So, again, looking at our ghost lore, our ghost rulebook, can a ghost haunt two places at once?
Well, that's the question. So if you were going to pick one, that would allow both to be true.
You know?
Yep, I'm with you. Gonna make a little handbook of ghost logic.
Our ghost rules. What we have decided happens with ghosts.
Yep. For when the GSPU is expanded into a full cinematic universe.
We start making movies.
Yep. You have to have your logic right from the start.
That'll be a scary time. That shouldn't be allowed to happen. You'll know things are bad generally if that happens.
And spookily.
This is exactly what I'm talking about. Next, there's the leather apron man.
What does he look like?
Well, you know, not the most catchy name for a ghost, but you've just communicated that it does get the point across.
Yep.
I've given one of the other ghosts we're going to talk about my own memorable moniker.
Oh, very nice.
It's not respectful, to warn you.
Sounds like something I would say.
So this is arguably better than the one I'm going to give to you later. I think you'll like this ghost story. Like I said, I had one that you'd be interested in.
Oh, yeah.
This is it. I'm curious to hear what you think. In 2001, a research group were brought in to explore the castle. Without being told what they were really there to experience and search for.
Good.
They weren't told about specific places in the castle that were haunted. They weren't told any of the legends of the castle that we've talked about. Nothing like that. They were just brought in to explore and generally document what they experienced.
Sounds good. Sounds
If there
good.
was anything out of the ordinary. This was led by a scientist, Richard something, I can't remember.
Richard Mixed Science Face.
Yep, that's his legal name. There were 240 volunteers.
Wow.
And they were investigating, I say investigating, but they didn't know what they were looking for. They were investigating the castle for 10 days.
That's a good long time.
So it's a pretty big group. They've established an environment where, you know, as best they can, they haven't been biased going in. And they're there for a considerable length of time. Would you agree?
I like to hear it. I like to hear it.
And I'll say again, they weren't prepped with any of the ghost stories and they weren't told to look for ghosts. They were just there to explore the building.
I'm now skeptical of that after our last episode.
I was going to say, don't be skeptical just because I've said it twice, because I had nothing to do with the research. Like, I assure you I told no one. I promise. I'm being completely honest. I told none of them.
I genuinely didn't tell anyone.
I'm genuinely the happiest I've ever been.
Yeah, I've forgotten which house it was, but it was the SPU. No, the
SPR.
The SPR.
Our Balakan House episodes.
Ah, thank you. The relief.
It means the world to me that you pay so much attention to what we do here.
I can't do it. I watched a YouTube video last night, went through to Eilidh to tell her about it, and had already forgotten the name of the person who the video was about that I'd spent 30 minutes watching.
Yeah, that did happen.
Anyway.
We need to, you know, I've got my little Covenanter cheat sheet. We need to make you a poster that's like beside your chair on that wall.
Ah, yeah.
Of like basic podcast facts.
I like
These
it.
are all things you've talked about. You should know them. It's just going to be like a full packed in list of just names. Nothing else.
In the South Park studios, one of the animators has a big picture of every character.
That would be so cool.
So, like, she can see them to draw them. That's what I need.
I mean, there's so many in South Park. That does make sense.
Yeah.
They're on season, like, 85.
Anyway, after the SPR went to Balkan House and did their thorough and unbiased investigation, there just wasn't I'm sceptical.
I'm not that sceptical because this is far more recent.
Oh, that's true.
And they knew they were going to be under far more scrutiny. That approaching it with a spiritualist point of view wouldn't really cut it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it sounds good. It sounds good if you take it on face value.
Well, when various volunteers were down in the vaults, the prison vaults that gave me the willies,
Yep.
and I told you I felt weird down there,
You did.
and I will never take criticism of my opinion again, because this proves that I was entirely right. They experienced something really strange that they couldn't explain. And like they weren't prepped to know like how terrible the prisons were. They didn't know about the conditions. Obviously, like looking at it objectively, it's not a nice place to be.
They could probably kind of guess,
Yeah,
but
like-
they weren't prepped.
I'm not, and like, there's various exhibits and things up in the castle, but you know, they didn't know the ins and outs of everything. They were down in the vaults and they started feeling really weird because they had this feeling that they were being watched.
Interesting.
Sound familiar?
It does sound familiar.
They couldn't shake it, and some of them felt this weird burning on their arm,
Oh, that'd be horrible.
which they had no reason for. Because you'll remember the vaults are quite cold.
Yes, very cool down there.
Because, you know, it's a big stone building.
Without any windows.
You're not going to be accidentally standing like beneath a window and getting hot.
Yeah.
But they had a really weird burning sensation on their arm. But then some of the volunteers who were down there saw a man in a leather apron just standing in one of the doorways
God damn.
and walked through it and I think just disappeared.
Well, that would be awful.
And they had they couldn't explain it because no one was there. And he was distinctive enough that they saw he was wearing a leather apron.
Wow.
But none of them were going around in a leather apron.
Well, yeah, it's not a typical dress, is it? I wonder, in that case, when the 1.4 million people are all visiting the castle.
At different times. They're not... You can't fit 1.4 million people in Edinburgh Castle.
And you're just walking
You
around,
loon.
having your tour. How often do people see ghosts and just think it's a person on the tour? Because if you looked into a doorway and there was a person there, you wouldn't linger. Cause
No.
there
I guess
was-
it would depend what they look like, eh?
Yeah, if they were in a 15th century dress, you might notice.
Well,
But
you might think it's a tour guide.
Yeah, you just
Because
think
that
it's...
happened at Stirling. Remember we had that... A woman was talking to who she thought was a member of staff, asking where the bathrooms were.
Yeah.
And then she got really upset when she couldn't find them. And they're like, well, you said you talked to someone in costume. We don't have anyone in costume. So it does happen. And when we were there, I think I told you about her after the fact. I don't think I pointed her out because she had gone. But there was this woman who was going around the castle with her partner, and she was wearing... It was one of the most beautiful like gowns I've ever seen. It was this like olive colour, greeny olive, and it was satin, and it was so pretty. And she had this like floral headpiece in her hair, and her hair was down. I thought, what an amazing outfit to wear to visit a castle.
Yep.
I love that. So I saw her wandering around. So she was wearing something atypical, but it was very clear that she was a visitor to the castle.
Or was it?
She was.
Yeah.
100%. She had an iPhone, Kieran.
A ghostly iPhone.
And her boyfriend was wearing a backpack. So they were definitely...
Wait, that's how we looked.
I was not wearing a gown.
No, we had the phone in the backpack, though.
I had my blue dress on, which I like.
You had a
but
nice dress.
She was in... It was a dress. Mine is kind of casual, just like a summery thing. But hers was satin and like, shiny. It was so pretty. If that was you, if you ever listen to this, please send me a message. I need to know more about the dress and the flowers in your hair.
Flowers in her hair.
But my point being, she was dressed in clothes that didn't exactly fit. But it was very obvious that she was a person.
Yeah, but had you just caught a glimpse of her going round a corner down in the vault, you might do a little double take.
Well, no, because she was in the vaults with us.
Well, you got a good look at her, so if you just like glimpsed her as she turned a corner,
I guess.
might stop you to be like, what? Or
Well, I couldn't speak to that. Maybe I would. I'm just saying from my experience, having seen her in the vaults around the castle, I didn't do that. But yeah, maybe you're right. Maybe just if you got such a tiny glimpse of someone. But they were there for 10 days, and I don't think it was necessarily when the castle was open to the public.
Well, actually, I began this making the opposite point.
Oh. Sorry.
That you would see a ghost and think it was a person.
Yeah, very true.
Which they didn't, because it was empty apart from them, assumedly.
I think so. If they're doing research, I would hope so. Mm-hmm. That's my assumption.
I kind of assumed they'd be there like after hours.
Well, yeah, in order to not bump into people all the time.
Yeah.
So what do you make of that one?
Spooky. I had blacksmith come into my head because the leather apron.
Weapons, artillery, and things were made there. Cannons were cast at the castle.
Spells were cast, that kind of thing. So, it makes sense. That would be a good character.
This really creeped me out because I remember very vividly there was this one like staircase that led down to a doorway in the vaults that I really didn't like. I didn't like looking down there, and I didn't like having my back to it.
Yeah, I remember that.
There was one point in particular, and like I told you immediately, because I was saying to Kieran at the time, I get upset because I tell you when I have these like weird feelings and I don't like it and I'm uncomfortable, because I have to tell you at the time. Mm-hmm. Because telling you afterwards for the first time means nothing. But telling you at the time also means nothing. But I have to say it, otherwise it's very clear I just made it up, so I have to tell you in the moment, and then I get nothing from you and I just get upset.
To be clear, I'm not an asshole. I don't just like shrug Ailey off, just be like, "Oh, you're so stupid. What are you talking
that's
about?"
That's something an asshole would say.
Exactly. So I don't say that.
No, an asshole would say, "I'm not an asshole."
Oh yeah. To be fair though, like I'm not an asshole. That's just shit coming out of my mouth again. Yeah, I do listen. I am receptive. I just don't share the feeling.
Well, it's not even that you don't listen, it's your face. You can't control your face.
I couldn't speak to that.
Exactly.
I don't know what my face does. Something rude, apparently.
You can't control the expression on your face. And I see it. But I felt that at the time, and I told you about it at the time. There was one bit in particular down there I really didn't like.
I mean, you're seeing ghosts, so we can't trust what you're seeing. Yes, I remember the part in question. The stairs down. And the creepy cellar-looking place. Mm-hmm. That you can't...
I didn't like it.
And you can't really see in, because it's quite a steep stairway, and then like an arch. Mm-hmm. So it's very...
So it is inherently creepy.
Ominous, yeah.
But I got the willies. I got the feeling, like in the mausoleum in Leith Hall.
Spooky.
Very spooky.
Maybe there's a man in a leather apron trudging around down there.
Maybe.
Going, eh.
Ew. On a slightly nicer note, people have reported seeing and hearing the ghost of a scruffy black dog wandering the dog cemetery.
I called it.
Mm-hmm. I'm not mad at that. I think we've talked about this exact thing before.
I think so.
But I would be quite happy to meet a ghost dog. That would be fine.
And that would be fun. Mm-hmm. Give him a ghost pet. Mm-hmm. Give him a ghost treat. That kind of thing.
I would have a ghost dog. Mm-hmm. In 2003, more strange things were seen at the castle. This time by construction teams who were doing restoration work on the Queen Anne building, which was used as officers' quarters, but you can now have like events and things there.
Oh yeah.
Which is why we haven't talked about it much. It was just where officers stayed. Mm-hmm. The construction team was absolutely adamant that they had seen and heard the ghosts of prisoners from the Napoleonic Wars.
Wow.
It was that specific. They were sure.
Specifically Napoleonic.
Mm-hmm. They were convinced they had seen and heard these people. And they were sure that they had heard them when they were trying to get work done. And they went so far as to say that these ghosts harassed them while they worked.
Oh my God.
And it got so bad that eventually there were members of that team who refused to be in there alone.
Really? Wow. Were they like talking French?
I'm not sure. I don't know what made them so sure. I'm assuming it must be something like that.
Yeah.
Or the way they were dressed. But it was that specific. It was prisoners from the Napoleonic War specifically.
Very cool. One-handed ghosts, that kind of thing. Very short.
Did Napoleon have one hand?
I think so.
No, he had two hands.
Did he?
Yeah.
Oh.
He's just, quite a lot of the time, he's painted in
Yeah.
portraits with one hand in his coat.
Oh, I just assumed he only had one hand.
No, it's just
Oh.
like a trendy way to stand.
Well, you shouldn't, because it makes people believe you only have one
I
hand.
was wondering, 'cause I've never heard that before.
Oh.
How have I never come across that? No, according to Family Tree magazine, the hand in coat pose was a fad among upper-class men of good breeding, dating back to the orators of ancient Greece.
Gross. Well, there you go.
His hands seem fine.
Well, I just look like an idiot now.
Yeah, because it's been claimed, this is from History Extra, it's been claimed based on no evidence that Napoleon hid his hand because it had been deformed in battle.
Ah.
There's another idea that he was constantly pressing on his stomach to alleviate his chronic pain, which at least makes sense, as he is thought to have succumbed in 1821 to stomach cancer.
Ooh. There you go.
But two hands.
Two hands.
Sorry, tangent there, but I had never heard that before, so I had to check.
At least you didn't go, oh yeah, and we just moved on with that just nugget of nonsense lingering behind.
It would have been nonsense. Napoleon one hand.
Yeah.
I've never heard that before.
Well, who knows where I got that
You
from.
dropped that in so casually, and
I just thought you had.
like I research in the history world fairly often, and I've never come across that.
You must know. You know about history. You know about Napoleon's one hand, obviously.
No. That would have been embarrassing for me if I was just like, oh yeah, like I've heard about that.
Oh, obviously, yeah.
Never heard it before, ever, but must agree. The claims of this construction team were bolstered by the fact that photos were taken of the workers in the Queen Anne building, because they're restoring an important castle, so they take photos of the process. And these photos apparently show really strange, quote, hazy blue orbs floating above their heads, unquote, which they couldn't explain and didn't appear in every photo.
Interesting. I'm not one for orbs.
No, but I think they were taking these photos to document something important that was happening. So they would have taken plenty.
Yeah.
And it would have been with a decent camera, I believe.
You'd hope so.
I can't find these photos. I really, really tried.
Oh.
They're not anywhere.
Why bring it up? Not you, like the researchers.
I'm sorry. I did my best.
Absolutely savaged. No, assumedly you read that on like the Edinburgh Castle website or something.
Yep. But I could not find these photos anywhere.
Well, then there's nothing to debate.
I don't know. We've talked about that before, where people are doing renovation or restoration in old buildings and strange things happen. Like in Roslyn Chapel.
Oh, yeah.
It happened a lot there, where they were convinced that like monks were walking around.
Yeah, it brings about a certain atmosphere, doesn't it?
It'd be very unsettling if you're just there to do your job. I don't know, it makes it more compelling to me.
Well, when you're not a specifically haunted location restorator, are you?
Well, no, you're there to do your job.
You're some sort of typically stonemason, I imagine.
Trying to concentrate. And you're making demands that you can't work in there alone. I don't see someone doing that lightly.
No. Interesting.
The next supposed ghost is a tricky one to tell you about, because it's kind of funny when it really shouldn't be funny.
Okay, is this the one you've nicknamed?
Yeah. I haven't helped things, because in my notes I have dubbed this ghost the poopy prisoner.
Tell me more about the poopy prisoner.
Well, let me explain. Back when we talked about the prisoners of war being kept in the castle, there were many jailbreaks, which we talked about. But I told you that I was saving one for this portion of the episode.
Ooh, did he escape out the toilet?
I'm going to get there. One prisoner managed to get out of the vaults, which would be a difficult task in itself. But the task isn't over because you then have to get out of the castle. And it was the latter half of his plan that didn't work out the way he hoped.
Is it the latrine half of his plan?
That was a better one. When he escaped the vaults, he saw a massive pile of manure and waste
Yep.
that had been piled onto a wheelbarrow as if it was ready to be carted out of the castle and disposed of.
Yes.
In his mind, climbing into this nasty pile would be worth it because he'd be wheeled out of the castle with no one any the wiser.
And he probably didn't smell much better.
Well, just you'd have to endure being tipped into wherever this was being taken. Just deal with it for that long, and then he's out. He's free.
Where are we going?
However, the manure pile wasn't tipped onto a bigger manure pile. It was tipped over the battlements.
Oh, no.
With the prisoner inside it. Which meant that this prisoner was tipped over the walls and down onto Castle Rock.
Oh, that's a rough way to go.
Yeah. Accounts say that he broke his neck in the fall and was left there because he's an escaped prisoner.
Yeah.
But other reports say that this escape attempt did happen, but he was caught before that ever happened. He was caught trying to climb into the manure.
Yep.
But they spotted him. So I've read both, to be clear. But people who have visited the castle in the modern day have reported experiencing a really weird, awful smell around the battlements. And some people have even reported feeling like phantom hands trying to push them over.
Ooh, that'd be horrible.
As they take in the view of Edinburgh, where the tipping apparently happened.
Gross.
Not great.
What a gross way to die.
You see, it's a little funny, but it's not funny.
It's kind of funny. The poopy prisoner.
Before
he was a poopy prisoner, maybe he was a shitty sailor.
Well, see, I had two options. It was poopy prisoner or shitty spirit.
Ah, very nice.
Neither are respectful. So, apologies.
You can be a ghost, but it doesn't mean your shit don't stink.
That laugh was very Linda from Bob's Burgers. I have two last ghost stories for you to end out the season.
Hit me. I'm excited.
Well, I think these are two ghost stories you would be disappointed not to have at Edinburgh Castle.
Okay.
We have a ghost drummer.
Oh, that's classic, isn't it?
Right? This is what I mean. This is what we need. And this is what we need to end the season on.
Yep.
A ghost drummer. The stories of this drummer go all the way back to 1650.
That's old.
Because people reported seeing this phantom drummer all the way back then. And he's headless.
I've heard of this ghost.
Yeah, you probably have.
Yeah. Headless drummer boy.
The next two are very famous stories. I would be surprised if you hadn't heard them before, because everyone's heard about them. The legend says that this ghost appears to warn the people of the castle when danger is coming. So it appeared in 1650, just before Oliver Cromwell attacked the castle.
Interesting.
Now, in 1650, the castle governor of the time wanted to try and understand why so many people were coming to him reporting phantom drumming and these really weird sightings.
Yeah.
That they kept saying was a headless drummer. He didn't get it.
It's a valid question.
Yeah. And it's causing disruption, so he needs to know. When he investigated, he, quote, never saw a ghost, but heard a drum playing an old Scottish war tune, with many feet marching to the beat.
Wow.
The sounds of the ghostly procession went towards and subsequently past the governor.
Oh,
unquote.
That's spooky.
Now, I imagine as if he is standing in the middle of a massive parade and they're just walking around him like a stone in a river.
Oh, that's spooky.
The sound of lots and lots of feet and a war tune.
Marching off to war.
Isn't that creepy?
That is creepy. I can see why that story has lasted.
Now, it's spooky, but the drummer hasn't been seen since 1650.
Oh.
But people more recently have heard phantom drumming that doesn't seem to have a source and no one can explain it.
Interesting.
So people think that the drummer will only be seen if the castle is in danger.
Ah. Yeah, because there'd be nothing to warn against. That's an interesting theory.
Mm-hmm.
I think that people are kicking stones and it's downhill and going...
Oh, see, that's interesting that you think of that kind of drum, since you played that kind of drum. Because I was thinking of a bass drum.
Oh, yeah.
But it probably is a snare drum.
A rat-a-tat-tat. For it to have a war tune, because otherwise it's just
boom, boom, boom. But that's when I think of war, I think of that bassy noise.
It would make sense, because when it's a beat to march to as well.
Boom, boom, boom. But yeah, you're probably right. It probably is a snare.
Yeah. More of a rat-a-tat-tat. Yep.
Yeah. Stories from the time, back in 1650, report other really weird things happening before the Cromwell attack. Things like sword-shaped meteors.
Oh, in the sky?
Yeah.
Not on the land.
No. And spectral soldiers riding horseback over nearby hills.
That's weird, isn't it?
So not even, like, strictly related to the castle. But people saw some really weird shit in 1650.
Well, especially when Cromwell was so, powerful.
He was a big threat.
Yeah.
War was coming.
Because you wouldn't expect the drummer boy, as 70 Jacobites throw a too short rope ladder over the wall, would you?
Well, yeah, that's my feeling for why the drummer boy wasn't seen every time. Some were more dangerous than others.
Are you not supposed to be drumming? We're quite a threat. No, you're not. Well, what do you mean, no, we're not? No, you're not.
You wouldn't even do them the grace of a reply. He's got no head.
Maybe just hit once for yes and two for no.
Hits them with the stick. Yeah, I don't really know what to make of all these stories. But I do believe in omens. So, I don't know.
Strange.
What do you think?
Well, it's a pretty creepy story. And I quite like an ancient ghost story.
Well, yeah, this has lasted a long time. This isn't part of a modern, like, ghost hunting fad.
Yeah.
You know, 'cause a lot of them exist. There's a lot of money to be made if you're a ghost hunter
Absolutely.
on TV. This is long before any of that, where if you were seeing ghosts and things, it could be quite bad for you. It could be turned on you.
Absolutely. So it's interesting.
Finally, we have the Phantom Piper.
There had to be a phantom piper, didn't there?
And that's why I had to save this one for last.
Yep. It's what the people want.
Yes. The Phantom Piper of Edinburgh Castle.
Oh, what does he do?
Please, why do you do that?
I'm just asking a question.
No, you're not. You're grinning from ear to
It's
ear.
a perfectly valid question, Eilidh.
I don't believe it is.
Does he play pipes?
Yes.
Okay. Could have just said.
Well, that's it, everybody. Kieran ruined it. We're going to leave.
So, well, that's it. Me and Kieran are getting divorced now.
Okay. Ghost Bagpiper of Edinburgh Castle.
Yeah, stop being silly, Kieran.
I don't have as exact a time frame for this one, but the story seems to come from at least a couple centuries ago. It was a couple 100 years old, when the castle was still manned by soldiers and was an active military base. The soldiers who were there discovered the entrance to a secret tunnel deep in the castle itself.
Yep.
You right?
Secret tunnel.
They were super intrigued by this, since they had no idea this existed. Might end up being a secret way to get out into Edinburgh itself, which might be no bad thing.
Yep, that'd be alright.
But they needed to know where the tunnel led and where it came back out onto the surface, if it was going to be any use to them. A regimental bagpiper was convinced by the rest of them who had made the discovery to go into the tunnel, even though they knew nothing about it, nor who else knew about this tunnel.
Yep.
And they told him to play, because they would be able to hear him above ground. They'd be able to follow the sound of his pipes and meet him at the other end of the tunnel. They could follow it see where it went.
Bit chicken shit, but fair enough.
Chicken shit.
Well, they could have just gone through the tunnel with him to see where it goes.
The piper ventured into the tunnel and began to play. The other soldiers followed the sound above ground, like they had said. They could hear him playing perfectly fine, and they could hear him through the cobbles, and followed him for a pretty sizable distance. They ended up leaving the castle, and they followed the sound of their piper down the Royal Mile, which leads away from the castle.
Yep.
If you have been to Edinburgh. They made it to Tron Kirk, about halfway down the Royal Mile.
It's a good way.
But that's when the piping stopped. They couldn't hear anything anymore.
Yep.
And this was when they started to panic. They went back to the castle, and this was when they decided to go into the tunnel themselves, because they worried that their piper had fallen ill or hurt himself somehow, so he couldn't play anymore. I'd gotten into some kind of trouble, so they needed to go in and bring him back.
Yes.
But despite all of their searching of this tunnel, they never found the piper.
Oh my god.
He was never seen again.
Oh, see, that's why they were chicken shit. Just left him to it. They left him to his fate.
Or were they smart? Because maybe they'd all be dead.
Oh, that's true.
Now, lots of people around the castle and down on the Royal Mile itself have reported hearing the faint sound of pipes, but there's no visible source. No busker playing, as is common all the way down the Royal Mile.
That was my first thought. There's probably just somebody playing pipes in the distance.
But it's very clear if someone's playing pipes nearby.
Yeah.
You know you're going to come round a corner and see them. No ceremony happening at the castle, which would explain the sound of pipes.
Mm-hmm.
But people hear the faint piping coming from down below the cobbled street.
God damn.
Now, some versions of the story say that the piper was just a boy, a very young boy who was lost. And some versions even say that the entrance to the tunnel was bricked up inside the castle.
I was wondering what's happened to the tunnel.
After they couldn't find him, so that no one else could be harmed down there. And it's a very well-known ghost story, this one. Lots of people know it.
Yep.
It's one that kind of gets repeated across Scotland. Like we talked about the ghost piper in the caves below Culzean Castle.
Well, that's what I thought when you started talking about this. I'm sure we've had this ghost story already
It had
somewhere else.
A similar format. It's almost its own ghost story genre.
Yeah.
But I love it. There's something about the story, even knowing that, it gives me chills.
Oh, yeah?
There's just something about the thought of ghostly pipe music that just gets to me.
And the intrigue of a secret tunnel.
Under the Royal Mile.
Ooh.
So much of Edinburgh was built up upon. There's multiple layers.
Well, that's just it, eh?
It's not completely out of the realm of possibility, I guess.
When there's so many of the vault of Edinburgh, not the castle, layered upon, as you said.
I know that these things all happen at different times and for different reasons, but there's something about it that catches the imagination, I think.
Yeah, I think so. And it's the piper, Scotland, you know? It fits.
But that is the history, the saga, the spooks of Edinburgh Castle.
Oh my god.
And the end of season 5.
We made it, you guys. We made it, guys and gals. Oh. I'm exhausted.
Me too.
That was a journey. What a journey through Edinburgh Castle.
Isn't it incredible? Such an incredible place. And it's why I saved it until I was a bit better at what we do.
Round of applause for Eilidh. Thank you very much for bringing us season 5.
Oh, you're so welcome. Thank you for being here.
Oh, you're so welcome. I have the easy job.
I can't believe this is the end of the season.
I know. The end of season 5.
We are going to take a month.
Yes.
And then we will be back with, hopefully, it's difficult to think of at the minute, but hopefully our mini-series on the Wars of Independence.
Don't believe her when she says mini. She's lying.
But we do also have some other exciting news for you.
Yeah, we do.
Podcast related. When we return for our mini-series, it will be it will be in a slightly different form.
Yes.
Would you like to make the announcement, since I've done nothing but talk this whole time?
I mean, I think you deserve to make it.
You think? Oh. We are rebranding the podcast So we will be returning as the Generally Spooky History podcast.
Yep.
Because we have become the deep dive. And a lot more history is happening here than spooks a lot of the time.
Yes, it started out half and half, and it's become less and less so.
But I love it. I absolutely love it.
So that better reflects what we do. Come for the history, stay for the spooks.
So we're leaning in. We have a new logo.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be great.
It's going to be great.
So you can come back and join us just in a month for some generally spooky history.
Yes, we're excited. So it will change on your podcast player, but you'll still remain subscribed or however you get it.
Yes, you don't need to do anything.
No.
It's just going to look a little bit different.
Yeah, but it'll be the same great format with your same awesome hosts.
If you miss us, we will be over on Patreon. We post there 2 to 3 times a week.
Mm-hmm.
So we're there all the time, ready to chat and hang out. There's the Wee Blether, where we chat, unscripted. We break down the episodes. We just talk about life generally. It's a good time. Odin's there a lot of the time, barking. It's good.
He is, you know.
While we're not in season, we're going to be posting more extra episodes over there. But there are about 10 over there already.
Mm-hmm. There's a full season of extra episodes.
And if you join, you get access to everything that we have up there already.
It's a good time. It's a good deal. And it's a great way to support your favourite podcast hosts.
It absolutely is. We have also started a new series called Spook or Spoof, where we break down ghost photos.
Yeah, it's really fun.
It's really fun. We have a great time. So if you miss us in the meantime, we will be over on Patreon as ever. And Instagram.
Until then, I guess we'll say goodbye.
I don't want to go.
It's too soon. I don't want to break. Okay, bye.
Bye.
Bye.